welcome to the channel. This is Joseph Curtis Reviews, and if you are here for the first time, do me a favor and click like and also subscribe today to stay up to date with more content. But with that out of the way, let's talk about why we are here. I'm actually with my good friends Richard and Timothy to talk about the highly anticipated sequel, Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. Let's just get straight into it. The general non-spoiler feelings. But after that, because this is basically a spoiler review, just want to let you guys know, please leave if you haven't seen the movie because we're going to ruin a lot for you. But right now, we're not going to start with spoilers. We're going to just start with our general feelings. Okay, so overall for me, this movie was a fun ride. There was some awesome action, spectacular sequences from like the visionary detail that Sam Raimi is able to bring. Like I saw callbacks from Evil Dead, Spider-Man 2, like the way that one-eyed giant monster was crawling the building. I thought immediately of when Dr. Octopus was crawling the building and the girl was screaming. I just love that. That is just Sam Raimi, the campiness of it. I know that some people won't agree with that. They'll be like, it was too cheesy. I ate it up. So Sam Raimi to me was the hugest highlight. He saved the film for me. And also Elizabeth Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch. Elizabeth Olsen's the MVP of this movie. Just have to say that. But at the end of the day, at its core, this film, it's still a Doctor Strange film, which I admired because I was worried about the title of it. It's called The Multiverse of Madness. And sometimes with a title like that, it can be like, it's more about this rather than the character. But I guess for a positive and a negative, for, to each their own, that's a good thing and a bad thing, because if you focus on one other thing, something else is going to be benched. So you're going to have a lot of people with different opinions being like, they should have focused more on this. I, however, think I'm glad that they focused more on Doctor Strange and America Chavez and Wanda. It was more of a personal story rather than this it is big and epic. I don't want to say it's not, but it's definitely a lot more intimate than I thought it was going to be. And like I said, Wanda is the MVP. They did a great job setting up her character from WandaVision to this. I bought it. I ate it up. And I feel kind of bad because I actually watched it. I watched it twice now. I watched it with one of my good friends, and they were like, I didn't watch WandaVision. And I'm like, I feel so bad for you because you're probably lost.
Yeah, neither did the person I went with either.
And I feel so bad about that. And it's like, okay, I understand. Because there was a review I read being like, if you are not an MCU diehard fan, you could be lost in this film. And I somewhat agree, but I guess to each their own yet again. I feel like if you are already watching this movie, you should probably already have seen the Disney Plus shows or at least have heard of it. And luckily this person has heard of it. They just didn't have the time to watch it. So I just feel kind of bad for people in those situations because it would be kind of jarring from Endgame and where her character was defeating Thanos or helping the Avengers defeat Thanos, then to go to here and be like, she's a completely different character. I don't think so. I think she did a great job. I think the writers, I believe the same guy who wrote Loki and Rick and Morty wrote this film, did a great job translating these characters that we've seen in the other MCU properties. And another thing I don't want to miss, the only issue that I had were some plot conveniences in the second and third act. I'll probably talk about that later because, like I said, non-spoiler. And the other thing was the madness for me. I know a lot of people are saying this. It's lacking in the multiverse, but the madness is great. And I kind of somewhat agree. Like, yeah, I could have got a little bit more multiverse, but I felt like the madness aspect of the multiverse, not like the plot or the film. Like, there's some great sequences, especially from Wanda, in like the third act. But when it comes to the madness aspect of the multiverse, I felt like they could have dived in a more enthralling approach because they have this cool sequence of a montage of the multiverse, and we've seen it in the trailers, but that's kind of it. And I could see why a lot of people would be disappointed. I am kind of in that same ballpark where I kind of wish we stayed a little bit in those different universes. So I wish there was just more madness to expand on those different alternate realities.
Yeah.
But other than that, I still had a good time. And yeah, sure, we could have had more like different multiverse concepts, but I enjoyed what Sam Raimi brought to the table. And the last thing I'll say is this feels the most creative MCU film. Like, you know, when you have a director and they're in the Marvel, like it's a director for a Marvel film. At the end of the day, most Marvel films feel like they've been made by the same director, which is essentially this true. It's Kevin Feige. He's the one who approves everything.
I don't think I agree with that, but go on.
Well, there's some movies. I will say this. There are some movies that do have creativity shown on screen, but I think this one, personally for me, this is the most creative one. This is like when you hear of a director and you see their name on this project, you're like, oh, this is a Sam Raimi movie. More so than
that I agree with. I think every director has their own personal style.
Yeah.
But like, if you just showed me certain shots from this movie and you were like, guess which director this was, I'd be like, yeah, that's Sam Raimi.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by that. I think this has more creative liberties. This is like, I feel like Kevin Feige, there's probably some sequences where he was like, you might want to rein that in a little bit because this is still a PG-13 movie, but they edged their way. I honestly think they edged their way. Like the guy that I saw the movie with last night was like, that movie was rated R, right? And I'm like, I know you're a dad. It's not rated R. He's like, well, it should be. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I believe that it's rated PG-13, but I can see why general moviegoers would be like, I don't think I'm taking my 10-year-old to this movie because they do some messed up stuff in this and I ate it up.
I think it's still a PG-13 movie. I don't think this is an R-rated movie.
I do too, but for a parent, they'd be like, this is not the MCU I know. This is what is this? It's Sam Raimi, baby, and I want more of it. I hope he comes back. So that's my general feelings. Whoever else, Richard, Tim, go right ahead.
Yeah, some overall feelings. I think that, like you said, there was a lot of range in this film. So it went to a lot of different places, and it did feel like, to me, it felt like several different kinds of movies in one movie. But overall, and I made a joke about this. It was like, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. At a certain point, it almost felt Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Sadness. Like there was like, it was a huge that was like a great title. Yeah, it was like a huge thing, that they were really laying on there. And I was like, okay, it definitely is interesting to see this side of, like you said, focusing on Doctor Strange and kind of diving a little bit more into like, how does he actually feel? He's like literally one of the most powerful beings that we know of. Like his mystic arts are like virtually unparalleled as far as we know. Well, I mean, we know now, like he definitely there's someone that is way greater than him and virtually everybody else. But we got a chance to actually explore that more, which I thought was super nice. I thought it was also nice to see America in there as well. I thought it was like super interesting, because she was in, okay, to let it be known, like I don't know all the comic book stuff. I know like there are people that know the comic book stuff, and like,
and I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, I don't really know. So I'm not sure where else she may be from, but I'm pretty sure she was like in the game, like in the Avengers game. Was she? Or am I making that up?
That's Miss Marvel, I think you're talking about. She's like the really stretching girl. They're gonna have like a Disney Plus show about her.
Yeah. Okay, never mind. Yeah. But
I'm pretty sure this is like the first ever live action, or just in general, like I don't think I've seen her like in an animated movie or anything.
Yeah, but I thought it was a nice change for me. It was also like very interesting. Like, because I don't know, like in a way, it was like weird to see like a kid, like just a kid in the like Marvel world. It's like all adults, it's all people that are like in their 30s, 40s, something like that, if not older. and then to just interject like an actual kid, you know, someone that's supposed to be like a teenager or something like that, who sounds like a, you know, teenager or whatever, who screams and screeches like a like a teenager, you know, like a little girl. Like that was like, I don't know, it was a very interesting like change, you know. It was like a very different color on the palette, so to speak. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm trying to think of uh I think yeah, overall, like you said, like for me, it was a fun watch. I did have a good time. Like it was so much stuff going on that I was like, okay, I didn't know we were going there. Like, oh, I didn't know we were going there. So you know, that was another thing that was cool. Um, Overall, yeah, like I don't know. I think maybe I'd have to like watch it again or give it some time. Um, like it wasn't my favorite thing to watch, you know, like I had a fun time watching it, but like it was just it did it a bit too much for me. So much so where it felt like there was like a lot of different hands on certain decisions. That's what it felt like to me. Like it wanted to go a certain kind of way, and then but it wasn't allowed to, and then it was trying to go another kind of way, but it wasn't allowed to. That's kind of what it felt like to me. So it didn't feel so cohesive. And yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll get into some other stuff later, but like that's, you know, my general feeling.
Yeah, I listening to you talk, Rich, I think you're putting a good chunk of my thoughts into words. I feel like certain creative decisions were for story beats were not necessarily allowed to be made, but allowed to be teased. um, and I feel like I can't say too much without getting into spoilery territory, so I'll stick to surface level. Like we were saying earlier, like directors have their own style for sure. The Russos are really good at like almost like the political thriller. Like Winter Soldier was almost a political thriller.
Oh yeah.
They're also really good at evenly weaving several characters together and really making the stakes feel high. Taika Waititi is really good at like this off-brand dialogue that feels like you got it at the dollar store, but it's still high quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but Sam Raimi's style is none of that. It's all visual. His style, getting reminders. Sam Raimi's style is not necessarily in the writing. It's in the visuals. Certain shots where without getting too much into the struggles between the protagonist and antagonist, during their struggles with the antagonist, they don't know if they're being followed by the antagonist. So they'll show like they'll pan the camera towards like the door, wondering if the antagonist is at the door. But the camera doesn't just move toward the door. It like flies and tilts toward the door. And way back in the day, when they would do like these first person perspectives on Sam Raimi movies where something is chasing after them or coming after them, the camera would appear to be very, very floaty, because what they did, if I'm not mistaken, and I can double check, was they like nailed or strapped the camera down to like a huge piece of plywood and then had a person on each end carrying it and just like lifting it up and down through the woods so that I would have like this swooping feel. And Sam Raimi does not necessarily that in this movie, but things like that where he uses the camera to tease a presence. It wasn't really in first person in this movie. It was, you know, more in like, are we being followed, rather than the camera is the monster. But that's the Raimi distinction, is that he uses the camera to tease a presence. And it's not really so much in the writing. Also, he has an obsession with powerful books and all things dead. It definitely felt like a Raimi movie. Not that I've seen a ton, I saw the Spider-Mans. I didn't see the first Evil Dead. I saw the second one. The second Evil Dead is like kind of in the all-time movies that people reference for cinematography, oddly enough. I guess I don't think it's too odd, because the point that I guess I'm trying to make with bringing that up is that people knew he was very innovative with very little resource. Also, rumor on the mill is that he's one of the nicest directors in Hollywood. There's a camera guy who works in LA who basically told us, he was like, Sam Raimi's so nice. He's like the nicest dude. Which, I mean, when I hear a director is notoriously kind like that, I'm glad to hear about them getting work, because it tells me that, the set probably was not a nightmare for people.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I know I liked the movie, but I think the movie for me falls into that category of like good, not great. I think the movie had a lot of untapped potential, and I don't know if it's that it wasn't allowed to go all out, or if that it chose to not go all out. Because I don't expect Sam Raimi to have sat down and watched every single movie to see what possibilities he could go with and go for. I just felt like the movie didn't quite stretch his legs as far as it could have, I guess, are my overall feelings on it personally. I don't know.
Interesting. I like this because it is different. It is like, it's not like there's somebody here who's like, I hate this movie, but overall people in this, I think not just in this chat, but I think overall as fans, there's people that are like, either they really enjoyed the film, or they were somewhat disappointed, but they still had a good time with it. But it's not like the best of the Marvel movies. And I think that's the thing. People were expecting an Endgame movie. People were expecting No Way Home quality. And I think because there was somebody who
I totally agree with that.
I do, because there was somebody, I forgot who it was, but who was working on the film. They said, expect twists like No Way Home mixed with Endgame.
Really?
What is that going to do? Yeah, there was somebody said that, and I was one of the people that fell for it. But then I saw the reviews coming out, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to lower my expectations. I'm going to go in open-minded. I'm just going to be like, what is Sam Raimi? What is Kevin Feige trying to do? And that helped my experience a lot, because honestly, I probably would have been more disappointed if I just went in like not knowing people like had this reaction. And I'm kind of grateful, because it probably would have dampened my experience with the film. But I still think at the end of the day, this is not like a low tier Marvel film. I think people saying that like it's like next to Iron Man 3 or Thor: The Dark World. I'm like, no, you're smoking something, buddy. This is like,
for the most part, I didn't mind Iron Man 3.
I respect what they were trying to do. I just don't like what they did. That's just my opinions on Iron Man 3. With this film, I think that's kind of maybe I guess for fans, that's how they'll feel about this, because there's a certain group that they introduce. So story-wise, okay, I'm going to read off the synopsis first from IMDb, then Rotten Tomatoes. First one's pretty short. Second one's kind of lengthy, but here we go. From IMDb, Dr. Stephen Strange casts a forbidden spell that opens a portal to the multiverse. However, a threat emerges that may be too big for his team to handle. That sounds more like the synopsis for Spider-Man No Way Home to me.
Yeah, it does.
So
yeah.
IMDb, I don't know what's going on. I just thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, in a way, I guess yes, because it is a direct consequence from that movie to this one. But it's not necessarily the plot of this specific
This
film.
movie was pitched like his No Way Home spell was going to be penalized.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really not.
It didn't feel like that at all. Yeah.
That's not what happened at all.
Right.
I'm going to put some socks on.
Get those warm socks on, man. So the next one from Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes says, in Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the MCU unlocks the multiverse and pushes its boundaries further than ever before. Journey into the unknown, Doctor Strange, who with the help of mystical allies, both old and new, traverses the mind-bending and dangerous alternate realities of the multiverse to confront a mysterious new adversary. kind of that's more of the approach. But when they say that mysterious new, I'm like, they're not necessarily maybe new because it's a new adversary because this person has never been, let's just say it's Wanda. And I've been calling it. People are like, who's the villain?
I'll give you credit, Jack. I didn't
Strange.
think that was what they were going to do. I'll give you credit. To me,
it was clear as day what they did with her with WandaVision. Honestly, ever since like her appearance from Age of Ultron, it's been this like beautiful villain arc. She has had the worst time of her life, but I want to save that. That's like the 2 categories from here, but yeah, gosh, I love what they did with her. But with this story, I really enjoyed the trailers. I really think what happened with fans is speculation started happening. They're like, Superior Iron Man's going to show up. Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, and Deadpool are gonna have a scene together. I even thought that too, which would have been amazing. And for a movie like this, and I think that's where a lot of people have an issue with, is it's called the Multiverse of Madness, and you only go to two different realities. And I can understand, like maybe like later on, I'll like watch the movie, I'll buy it, and like, yeah, that was kind of disappointing. But for me, I was like, okay, yet again, what was Sam trying to do? What was Kevin's mission for this film? And I think they kind of accomplished it, but kind of tagging in from No Way Home story to this, I felt like they kind of put it to the side because I thought it was going to be more of a direct connection. It's like, oh man, this is such a huge event, and Doctor Strange and his consequences. I mean, Peter's consequences, because that boy needs to shut up. But Doctor Strange in this story kind of shows how far he's willing to go. And I think they did a really good job with that. But when it comes to No Way Home, I really wish they like lined it up a bit more, because it does feel like a connection. Like it still does feel like a sequel from No Way Home. Like, here's Doctor Strange. We're thrown right into his world right after a wedding. Of course, there's something happening. I loved that. And then with Loki, with like even more expanding upon the multiverse, right? Richard, did you ever watch Loki? Did you ever get to the end of that?
Yeah, I did.
Cool. I didn't want to ruin that, but this feels more like when that ending happened, which I loved. I love the actor who's playing Kang, or he who remains. When he expands on that, I felt like they were in this film that they were going to expand on those ideas a bit more, which in a way they kind of did, but not really. And I think that's why, for me, I was disappointed in that aspect. The aspect of the connection piece from Loki and Spider-Man, because it felt like a buildup to this movie. And that goes back to the idea of speculation and expectation. I think people speculated that certain things were going to happen, and it didn't. And people were like, it's a 6. It's okay. Because Tom Cruise didn't show up. Getting red. It's like, I mean, I would have loved that. I think they missed out on that because he was going to be originally Iron Man. Like, there were so many things that fans know that they could have like exposed in this film and been like, wow, that's such a cool callback. Like, it's great. It's great seeing Bruce Campbell like being in the film, but it would have been cooler.
My favorite out of nowhere cameo is John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, dude, literally in my theater, they erupted in applause.
That's in my theater.
Yeah,
every time for me,
they erupted.
Clapping every time. I was like, "Woo, that's Jim Halpert. Let's go, baby. Let's go." Where's Pam at? Where's Pam? But for me in the story, like I liked the direction that they were going in certain parts, but I do kind of agree that there were things that were teased that weren't really fully fleshed out, and maybe there were certain story beats that could have been replaced or shortened or removed. And I feel like there was probably a lot of things on the floor, given there was not a leak, but Sam Raimi said that the first cut was 2 hours and 40 minutes. And given, and given, here's the reality too, the Batman first cut was 4 hours. That's just a reality with Hollywood. Like, they will have their first cut, they'll submit it, and then they'll be like, chop this, you don't need that, you don't need that. I think what happened with this movie was there was probably a lot more cameos. But at the end of the day, cameos are empty calories. you don't really need them. They're there, and it's cool to be like, oh. But what does that do for the plot? I think the cameos, and we'll get to that section later. I think how they handle that in this story, it made narrative sense, and that's why I was a fan of it, and how they handle those characters, which I liked it because it made sense yet again with the story that Sam and Kevin were trying to give to us. But enough about me. Story wise, obviously, like we're already talking spoilers, like, and this can be a conversation now. Like now going into these topics, I feel like this can definitely be a conversation piece. So whenever I'm talking, chime in. I want us to like dive deep in this for the next probably 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can move on to the next category.
So pretty early in the movie, there's a version of Doctor Strange that is immediately killed. My video camera is super skippy right now and a little laggy, so that'll be fun in editing. He's immediately killed, and Doctor Strange buries him in their world, which is officially classified as 616, which, if people don't know, Earth 616 is like the mainline canon, like in the comics, all the comics, that's Earth 616. So the MCU is calling itself 616 for all intents and purposes. And so a different Doctor Strange is buried in 616 on top of a building. And I was like, they're going to use that. I was like, at some point, they're going to use that. And I do want to say that later in the movie, when the concept of dream walking, I think, is a really cool idea. It's this idea that essentially you can inhabit the body of another version of yourself in another universe. So Strange does that to his dead self and becomes like a zombie Doctor Strange and creates a cloak out of the souls of the damned. And
that was like, incredible.
I was like, I was riveted. I was like, what is this? This is amazing.
Like, the design of it was so cool. I was like, that's totally a Sam Raimi thing to do, 1,000%. Yeah.
That shot with the hand going up, I was like, yes.
And with all the hands, I mean, it's in the trailer, but all the hands coming like out of the cape, I was like, that looked so gnarly. A big fan of that. And making Wanda the villain works because it's one of the very, very few villains that, even though there are several arguments and points she makes that are very contradictory, to the point that she knows it, and her response to being confronted with those contradictions is violence. You still, like, it's one of the few villains you actually genuinely feel bad for, because her instincts as a mother overrides those contradictions. And it's like, I understood that. Like, when they ask her, when you find your kids, what are you going to do to the version of their mother? She doesn't know what to do with that.
Silence, just violence.
Yeah, she just explodes. Like, it's a total short circuit in her brain. But to some extent, that's kind of relatable when you are confronted with, to some extent, controlling the fate of the people you love and wanting to be a part of their lives. But her being a part of their lives is a disruption. And she cannot balance that out in her mind. And I think it does a good job of making her, honestly, a pretty good villain and a pretty compelling and broken character. There were times where I was just like, she should be more powerful right now. Like, there's one scene where she's chasing them and she's literally limping. And I was like, she could fly. Like, she should really easily be able to catch up to everybody right now. I don't know why we're limping.
They did that clearly for like here's a jump scare scene. Here's a Sam Raimi horror moment. And every single time when I watch the scene where they just stand and stare, I'm like, it's like that typical horror movie where you're like watching the dumb girl who's trying to run down from the scary ghost face guy. You're like, no, go that way, idiot. Why are you just standing there? That's literally what it felt like. And I think they did that for a reason. Like, people are saying that's just dumb. Like, no, it's like a cliche in horror movies where somebody's just standing and staring and they're like, what's going to happen for 30 seconds straight? Jump scare. I love that. I ate that step up, even though somebody could see that and be like, that's dumb.
I mean, as far as the story goes, I think there's two ways like to look at it at the same time, right? So there's the internal story, and then there's the story and context of all the other stories in the MCU. And I feel like the internal story, while it did go from A to B, there were like weird stutters like in between, and as far as the context of like this story to all the stories, which I think like is what everyone is agreeing on, is like that it's like disjointed. For me, it felt like it just like what I wrote in one of my notes is I said this film felt out of character for an MCU film, which was said earlier, earlier on. It just felt like drastically different. But I don't think that to your point earlier, Joseph, like I don't feel like it felt that way because people were, I'll say it didn't feel that way to me because I was comparing it to like an Endgame or something like that, because I wasn't. I was comparing it to like the last Doctor Strange, which obviously, had a different director or whatever. But like, I really enjoyed the first Doctor Strange. Like it made complete sense to me. Like I loved where they went with it, and that kind of thing. So then like when I got to this film, I was like, what? But like in context to like all the other like MCU stuff, I went on to say this almost felt like a filler episode of an anime, like where most of the main characters aren't there, and it ends up meaning virtually nothing to the main story. Like that's how it ended up feeling to me, where it's like, okay, after all this, like of course they're gonna continue it on, right? So like, that's like a little bit hyperbolic, like what I'm saying, but it's like it felt like at the end of it, I was like, okay, so like now what? And of course they had, I mean, we're gonna talk about the scene, the post-credit scene. So I'm not gonna get into that yet. But again, obviously they're gonna continue it. Obviously there are, things that are implied outside of, just this movie. But like when I just watched the movie, it's like what happened? Like what was the net of it all? Because at the end, the Carmitage got rebuilt. Like, even though a lot of people died, it's like they just moved on from that. So everything was fine, which I mean is a regular movie thing, like a bunch of people die and it's like, we just move on. So there was that, of course, like all the other main MCU people that, we're used to seeing, like aren't in it. And of course, because it's a Doctor Strange movie, it's not an Avengers movie or whatever. But so we don't see like any of those people. And it's like we were saying before, as far as it being connected to all the other multiverse stuff that we'd seen, it like it didn't feel like a direct continuation of any of that. Like it was like if I hadn't watched Spider-Man, right? If I didn't watch that last Spider-Man, I would not have connected the stuff that was going on to that at all.
At the same time, though, like I think I somewhat kind of disagree, because now thinking about it, because now watching it twice, and maybe your opinion could change after watching it again, but thinking about the events of Infinity War now and how his character, because he wasn't an Endgame, he was gone for 90% of the movie till the final amazing battle sequence. But I think the point of this film is about kind of tracking from ever since he gave Thanos the Infinity Stone and then him helping Peter. It's that he's reckless and he's willing to help people. He has a good heart. And that's why I feel like at the end of the day, it's still a Doctor Strange film. So as a story, what I liked is that it does make sense for him in this film, but I can understand why you can have that opinion of like, it's just a lot. And what's the point of this? Like, and I kind of want to give the point right now, but I'll say that for the post credits. Like I I think I know what they're trying to set up, if I'm correct, because I know a little bit of what they did in the post credits and what they were teasing throughout the film.
Yeah.
But yet again, that's kind of an issue with like not every single, person that's going to watch this is going to know exactly what they're trying to do, because there's so much lore, there's so much in the comic books that not everybody's going to get it. And it's going to be more of a film, like you said, like it'll appear as a filler movie, which in a way it kind of is, because it doesn't really do anything for right now, the greater MCU, but the teases that not a lot of people will see, it actually is creating something that has been kind of teased since some characters that they introduced in Captain Marvel. And like I said, I don't want to get deeper into it because I know we have sections, but I do disagree in the sense of like story-wise, I feel like they did find a way to still make it about Doctor Strange, and it is kind of cohesive about, this man, like from the scene when he's at the wedding, for example, he's talking to his old partner, and it's one of the best scenes. And I hope they go back to that theme, because sometimes the MCU does this where they have great moments and then they'll just forget about it. They'll move on. Like, for example, Mordo, kind of disappointed with what they did with him in the story.
Oh my God.
I feel like you and I would share the same feeling, because what they did, I feel like there's a Doctor Strange 1.5, because how he responds to that version of Mordo is like, yeah, he basically dedicated his life to kill all wizards and me. And it's like, so did that happen? Because why did they tease that in the other movie? I was a little bit upset about that.
I was so ready for that. I was super ready for Mordo to have figured out stuff about about the multiverse, to have figured out like all the different stuff that they've been up to and whatever else. And like,
but they're maybe bringing him back for the third one, because remember he had that issue with the Ancient One when he realized she uses the powers of the Dark Dimension, and guess who used the powers of the Dark Dimension? I don't know, that could be reaching, but I can I can still understand why it's just a lot. It's just like, okay, at the end of the day, what does this mean? Like, it's entertaining.
I mean, I agree with your point about it like being a Doctor Strange movie, which is why I said like my alternate title is The Multiverse of Sadness, because like they really try to drive home the point that like, no, Doctor Strange isn't happy. Doctor Strange isn't happy. He's very sad. He's very lonely. The only person that he ever cared about in his whole life outside of himself, like, moved on and, got married to this guy. And now, the only thing is like, maybe some other version of his woman in like another universe, which, isn't going to happen. But it's like, they did drive that home a lot, and that made sense. But like, I don't know, for me, like I said, as far as the connection to other things in the MCU, I didn't feel that. Like, even if you saw the What If series, right? Like okay, so I'm not gonna spoil that then. But like,
I'm aware of some of it.
Yeah, there was. So like at the very end, I'm not gonna say what happens at the very end, but like there are things that happen in the last two episodes that I was like, oh snap. Okay, so this is. And so when you talk about multiverse and all this other kind of stuff, then I'm like, okay, maybe they're gonna incorporate some of that in there. And then it was like nothing. It was like the you know what I'm saying? It was like the only reason why what was happening with the multiverse was bad, like in this movie, the only reason why the stuff that was happening in the multiverse was bad was just because like Scarlet Witch wanted to find a way to another universe so she can have kids. Like that was it. It wasn't like,
that's why it's like it's such a big scope story, but it's so small.
Yeah,
at the same time,
because I thought there was going to be, you know what I'm saying, some sort of, tribunal or something that was going to come after Doctor Strange, for like tampering with the multiverse and also the kind of stuff. No, it was just, a woman that like wanted the kids that are in her dreams, found out they're in another universe, and like was gonna rip through all the multiverses to get to it. Like that was it. Like that ended up being, like part of the story, right? The driving part of the story. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But when we're talking about, like, if we were to talk about expectations or something like that, maybe that was an expectation that maybe should have been dropped or something. I think you would even reference, like, I don't know, like maybe if they just changed the name of the movie, I feel like people would have just felt so much better about the movie. Because when you say Multiverse of Madness, and almost every single thing that Marvel has put out recently has all been about multiverses, and then it's like we're dabbling in the Doctor Strange world, where we're talking about mystic arts, and we're talking about magic, and we're talking about all this stuff, and they are like so particular about the balance of the universe and also the kind of stuff. And then it's like it's like the most they do with the multiverse is you have America that like punches holes through a bunch of multiverses, and they just multiverse skip, and they're in like two universes, like you said, like basically in the whole movie. That's it. And then it's like, it's just like, okay. And so that was a thing for me, where it's like when I get down to what the story is actually about, it's about, like you said, the recklessness of Doctor Strange, just in that he does care about stuff, but there's certain calculations that he makes that are like at times like dispassionate. So it's like, I know it can unravel the entire universe, but I think it'll be all right.
This is a great segue, and you can continue, because like I feel like we should talk now about Strange in America.
Yeah.
And we can talk about solely Strange right now. Like I want you to finish your thoughts, but we're moving on now to Strange in America. I feel like this is a strange movie, but they obviously introduce a new character, and just wanted to see your guys' thoughts. But continue, Richard, on your thought though.
It was interesting seeing Doctor Strange reckon with his loneliness in like a real way, and also him seeing like in every version of me, like I do bad things. I can't remember what movie that was, that it was like something similar to that, where it was like Loki. it was like, wait, did everyone here see Loki? I feel like yes, right? Okay. Yeah, but it's like it's like what they were telling Loki. Every version of you is destined to fail. Like you never win.
Yep.
And just the kind of, and I feel like in this movie more than Loki, we got to see what the depths of that like felt like, right? Like reckoning with, because here you have this person who at one point was Sorcerer Supreme, who has like, he's a master of the mystic arts, and also the kind of stuff, and who thinks, because he's also like egotistical, who thinks that all the decisions that he makes are the right decisions. And here he is being confronted over and over and over again with how he like is a bad person in like every timeline imaginable. Like he always fails, and he always chooses the wrong thing. And no matter how much progress he's made, like no matter how much character development he thought he's had over time, like he's still confronted with the fact that like, dang, like I really can mess up at any moment. Like any decision that I think is the right decision could actually be the wrong decision. And I think that that was super cool. That we got to see him reckon with literally the dark version of himself, and to see where he could go, and that kind of stuff. I'm just curious, like by the end of the movie, like, is he actually different? You know, because I feel like this Doctor Strange that we saw, um, I think he's always had a propensity to like get better. So the same thing with like Tony Stark, right? It's like, sure, he always like was also egotistical, but like he did make improvements over time. He made these small improvements over time. And I think we saw that with Doctor Strange. I think that this was it 616? Was it, is that this universe?
Six
Yeah,
one
so
six. Yep.
616.
yeah. So I think that the 616 Doctor Strange was always the good Doctor Strange. Like I think he was
Mhm.
always the Doctor Strange that was going to make those improvements. But I think by the end of the movie, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I could just not remember, but like he was the same Doctor Strange. Like it's not like he became like, I feel like the decisions that he made in the film were the kinds of decisions that he would have made. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that he behaved any differently. So it's like we had a movie where we saw his loneliness and we saw like, how also he didn't want to be a bad guy, but I don't think we ever saw him change really, but I mean, that could just be me. I'm curious to see what you guys felt about that.
I think when it came to the multiverse hopping, I did expect more as a whole, and I didn't know they were going to use like a character's powers to basically unlock the notion of that being something that they could all do. Part of why I really liked Infinity War and No Way Home is because they give a sense of closure, like a chapter is done. Like Spider-Man's identity is a secret, he is who he is now, or just the huge amount of closure that came from Endgame, closing a lot of chapters for a lot of really key characters, ending an entire 20 movie long saga, gave a lot of closure. What I don't like is when a Marvel movie or show comes out and it's good, and they're like, basically, it presents the possibility, at the risk of sounding heartless, of branching into a lot of directions I don't really care about. Like, I don't know. Did you see Hawkeye, Rich?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, I won't spoil anything, but there's a minor character in Hawkeye. Not that they're not important, but they're a minor character. They did a thing that was important, and then after they did that thing, Disney was like, surprise, they're getting their own show. And I'm like, but why? Why are we?
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I feel the same
I know
way.
you do. And I guess I'm just looking for more focused narrative. And the reason I'm saying that is because presenting America Chavez as this girl who essentially is capable of intentional dimension hopping it's a huge branch. Like, it can go every which way and it can open up a whole world of possibilities. I just don't know if I care about them all. Like, the world that I am currently invested in the MCU is this 616. I'm not invested in these other worlds because they're not currently a threat. The only threat that doesn't necessarily reside in 616 is Dormammu, because he's like an interdimensional threat. And if they want to deal with that, cool, fine, great. I guess I'm really hoping the MCU just kind of gets back to a more focused narrative instead of jumping out into all these branches. One of the things that I didn't particularly like about Loki is that it immediately makes light of all the things that the last 20 movies have been building up to. In the first episode of season 1, the Infinity Stones are literal paperweights in their offices. And I get that it's trying to be like, look at the cosmic scale we're working on. But I don't like that because it immediately makes light of these things that people have died for in the movies that we've seen and love and care about. And like I said, presenting America Chavez with the kind of power she has, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but it puts the possibility of just branching out so far that it kind of risks making everything meaningless. It's kind of on the table now for 616 to not really mean a whole ton in the face of a girl who has the power to go anywhere. Like she could go, I think they said the stones don't do anything in a universe that they don't inherently come from. But still, I'm struggling to come up with words, but essentially it's a really convenient story device. I just think it's too convenient a story device to leave on the table. I think again, at the risk of sounding cruel, I'm a little bit like, I'm not surprised she survived the movie, but and it makes sense for her to go to, how do you say it? Cumberbatch? Is that how you say it? Am I saying
I think
it
so,
right?
yeah.
Mhm.
It makes sense to have her go there and train there and become super duper powerful interdimensional hopping monk girl.
It's pretty sick though when you think about it. She's like, what?
What do they call themselves, monks? What do they call themselves? Am I being presumptuous?
I don't even know. I
Yeah,
don't
to be
remember.
honest.
I'm not sure.
Sorcerers.
Maybe, I guess. Yeah, she's interdimensional hopping sorceress. I mean, essentially, she has potential to become one of, if not the most powerful character in the MCU.
That's exactly why I like where they left her character. It's like there's a lot that they could do with like the grand scheme of things for her.
Yeah, there is a lot that they could do. But at the same time, having an ally that powerful is a magic key. If they ever come across a threat like bigger than Thanos, they could be like, hey, since you can control your power now, can you just bamf us to a dimension that has a hero more powerful than our villain? It's too big. It's too big, and it presents a. It's kind of like, why didn't we have the Eagles fly the ring to Mordor? It's that level of. It's that level of
We
plot
wouldn't have
convenience.
3 great movies, Tim. Okay, we wouldn't have 3
I know
great films.
they were all 10 out of 10s, and I understand. I think the point of the Eagles is that they are neutral until things are out of balance, and it was in that moment they found things to be out of balance. I can to some extent understand that, but that doesn't really apply here. It's easy to just go to another dimension and be like, hey, can you go get us a Mr. Fantastic that's just as
that's the
strong as
risk of the
Captain Marvel
multiverse,
to kill
though.
this villain? And
yeah,
she could just
that's
be
the
like,
risk
sure.
of the bigger multiverse, though, because like it's a great idea, but then it becomes like what you're saying, and I feel what you're feeling when it comes to like paperweights, the Infinity Stones. I connected with that, those movies and that buildup. So multiverse can do a lot, but it can also emotionally dampen the emotions that we've had previously, and it's like, so that meant nothing.
Essentially,
I can understand that.
The short version of what I'm saying is her presence and her ability to control this power makes future threats almost meaningless. Because she can go anywhere where a hero is more powerful than their villain. Because the multiverse is infinite. There's worlds of paint. There's worlds of it. They're constantly being created all the time. And she is gaining control of her power to be able to get to one by thinking of it, more or less. And it makes future threats almost meaningless. Now, I don't know if they're going to play the card where they're like, Doctor Strange will never tell the Avengers about her because that way she's safe. But that's honestly like a selfish thing to do, to risk the fate of their entire universe to hide and keep one person safe, which I know sounds cruel on paper, but But really, if she does have control of her powers, she's the magic key to stopping every future threat in every show, in every movie, in every spin-off. She's insanely powerful. Like if she'd gotten control of her power earlier in this movie, she could have punched a hole to a universe where a more powerful and more altruistic Wanda could have come in and fixed everything. Mhm. Yeah, I kind of got it too. Yeah. This sucks. I'm pretty sure that's in the Bible. Jesus' last words. This sucks, bro.
Right. Right.
1 out of 10.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I feel like I think like I thought that this movie was going to be the repercussions of
Of No Way Home,
everything.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought that that's what this was going to be, but like it it wasn't that. It was a further stepping stone to when we start to see the repercussions of the multiverse thing, because um I feel like with exactly what you're saying with Kang, because that's what I was thinking too, right? Because there's so much stuff out there, like as it pertains to the multiverse and like what happens when you start to mess with things and when you start to mess with timelines and all sorts of kind of stuff, that are real repercussions. What we saw in Loki laid that out, and also in the What If series, like in the last two episodes, laid some of that out as well, like in a like yes and no, like you would just have to watch it, but like where it gets just very interesting. So that's why I thought this movie was going to follow up on, was that kind of stuff, but it didn't. I think that it was that bridge point um to get to set that stuff up, because like if you're gonna have a being that can like jump between a bunch of different, excuse me, jump between a bunch of different
Worlds, yeah.
yeah, worlds and stuff, there's going to have to be a consequence to that. And like I feel like sure, Kang is going to be an enemy. However, I don't even think that Kang is going to be the greatest threat. I feel like it's going to be whatever is actually over like managing all that stuff. Like I think that whatever that is, or whatever those people are, or whatever,
like the TVA.
yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? Like the TVA of the TVA is going to like chime in or whatever. I feel like that's kind of like where they're trying to go. And to your point, Tim, like I think I can't remember what it was in reference to, or even who I heard it from, but they were like positing the same kinds of like fears of like, oh boy, like playing the multiverse card unlocks so many like just easy, easy writing.
Codes.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of cheat codes. So it's like the way that they play it is but I like, part of me is hopeful that they do interesting things with it. You know what I mean? Like that they do go this route of like, sure, we have this character that it can seemingly do anything, but like there's more things at play. There's more dynamics to it than that. Like it can't just be a get out of jail free card, right? That there has to be some sort of cost to that. And there's a cost that we haven't seen yet because no one even understands that. Like when America was telling Wong and Doctor Strange, like, I don't have dreams. I'm the only one. Like they couldn't even like fathom that at first. And that was another thing too, that the fact that at that point we thought that, Wong and Doctor Strange were it. You know what I'm saying? Like they're the guys. You have the Sorcerer Supreme and like the ex-Sorcerer Supreme. And they know virtually everything. And they didn't know anything in regard to the multiverse. And then when Doctor Strange goes to that other universe, then they're like, oh yeah, we know all kinds of stuff already. Like you're from whatever universe, like we already have them all numbered. Like we know all this different kind of stuff, yada yada, and it was like, what? And so it's like, if there's that, right? If there were regular beings that like understood all these things about universes and yada yada, all this other kind of stuff, like I believe that there has to be some sort of cost associated to jumping between these different universes. I think that 616 just doesn't know what any of those are.
Well, yeah, and I think we got a tease of the consequences, the incursion that happened, and obviously
that's right. I forgot about that.
We'll save that.
That's a fair point.
Because like there will be consequences for him, and what I do like though about his character, because you were talking about him and the decisions, and I don't know if like he's changed all the way. Like he might have gotten a good lesson or whatever, but he's still like him, and the decisions that he's made, it's something that he would make, like getting the Darkhold and basically, what do you call it, astro projecting, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
which is crazy. And actually we'll probably talk about that in the next section, which is Wanda. But to kind of like end this one with Doctor Strange and America Chavez, there will be consequences. I really feel like how they ended it, the story arcs, the teases that we get for the potential for the MCU, I think that's kind of been a theme for like the last couple MCU movies, is consequences, decisions, rather than just being like a good, happy, fun, entertaining film, which at the end of the day, like you were saying, this is in a way kind of a filler movie. But I feel like there are things that are leading up to this greater thing. And it does kind of suck when you have to have a movie like this, in a sense of like, and I'm not saying I think the movie sucks or whatever, but for people that feel this way, where it's like, I just want a contained movie, right? Like a great contained film is Shang-Chi. That is, I don't know if you've seen that one, but it is an amazing, it's one of my favorite origin films from the MCU. Another great one. Winter Soldier, honestly.
That's one of my favorite ones.
That one is an amazing film. And Iron Man 1. People debate about this, but I am a huge fan of Eternals. I know that a lot of people are divided on it.
I actually haven't seen it yet. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I won't spoil anything, but that's a very contained, and that's why I feel like a lot of people didn't like it because it's so different. It felt like a DC movie to me. But I think with with these characters, I really feel like we're gonna see. Obviously, we're going to see them come back. It says Doctor Strange will return, but there will be consequences. Sorry,
yeah,
you were saying?
That just reminded me when you said about characters. One last thing that I was going to say about like what I feel like they're doing with this multiverse thing, which is, you know, what I'm hopeful of, was, and this dips a little bit into the cameos thing, but then I'm going to hop back out of it. But I think that that's also what they're going to be doing. Like, I feel like they're going to be doing a lot of like taking past, you know, maybe past versions of certain like MCU stuff that was like proto MCU stuff and bringing them back, or like I think they're going to do a lot more with that, like a lot more crossover stuff, where it's like it wasn't MCU, right? Or it was like MCU adjacent, but they're going to like weave it in. I feel like that's kind of what they're going to start trying to do with the multiverse thing as well. But anyway,
Wanda time now. I'll start off real quick. I probably won't honestly be that long with this one. But just my God, to me, she was the MVP. She is honestly one of my favorite Marvel characters, and not just characters, but one of my favorite MCU villains. I had to do a quick ranking. Like, I looked at all the list. I looked at like this website that had the top 20 or whatever. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, I kind of agree with some, kind of disagree with others. But number 1's Thanos, 2's Killmonger, 3's Loki, number 4 is Wanda. She's up there. She's in the top 5 for sure. I knew that for a fact, but I had to really think about it. I was like, Loki or Wanda? I was like, I've just seen Loki for such a long time, and he did such an amazing job in Avengers and Thor, him tossing and turning between being good and bad. Like, Tom Hiddleston is just a phenomenal actor. And this might be, like, I don't know, like, Elizabeth Olsen teased that they could still do more with her character, even though she dies. She's not dead.
No, you don't see the body.
You don't see the body. That's
you
a rule.
don't see it. It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. So
Pixar, it didn't happen.
She's way too powerful. Like, she's way too powerful to die like that. Like, I felt like if that was really like, let's just say a week later, Kevin Feige's like, yeah, she's dead. It's like, number 1, that's not going to happen. But number 2, that would be the most underwhelming. That's like, I don't know if you guys have seen, I know, Tim, you've seen it, Game of Thrones. But when a certain character dies, and they die, and everybody wanted this character to die in a certain way because of how vicious and vile they were. But how they do it, they die by a building collapsing on them. And that's the same feeling I would get if that's how they killed Wanda. Obviously, I love this character more than this other one in Game of Thrones, but it's like, you wouldn't do that. So I don't, people thinking like, oh no, she's dead. That was so lame. It's like, no, she's not dead. Get out of here. No, sorry. I mean, not sorry. It's okay, buddy. She's alive. They're going to do something with her. They would not end her character like that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But I was kind of hoping, in a weird way. I guess I was kind of right, but not right, because we obviously see through it that she's not dead. I kind of did want her to die, because I felt like she's kind of like Kylo Ren.
Huh?
There's no forgiveness. There's no redemption for her character.
What?
This is what I mean. Not exactly like Kylo Ren, but the idea where it's like, this character is not redeemable. What, Tim? You're like, I gotta take my glasses and rub my, oh my gosh.
You think that the Scarlet Witch and Kylo Ren are like alike?
The idea of being unredeemable. I feel like she can't be good anymore. I feel like she's way too far gone. Like, the events of WandaVision and this just capitalized her as being this, like, no. I don't see her being an Avenger again.
I hear what you're saying in that she murdered a lot of people in this movie, and maybe that can push her past a point of redemption. Also, bear in mind that Kylo Ren played a part in an empire that blasted several planets at once.
I know. But here's the reason why people say that. They don't say it because of the planets. Let's get real. They say that because he killed his dad. That's the reason why. They're like, hey, he killed Han Solo. You can't do that to Han Solo. And everyone's like, I hope he dies. And then he did. Made fans happy.
That was a really poorly written way to kill off a beloved character.
Bro.
Yeah, it really was.
Not for me. Great movie. One of my favorites. Sorry, I said it. I said it. I
love
Debate.
you. Jack, I love you, but jump off a cliff. All right.
I will. I will.
I say this with all respect, but jump off a cliff.
You remember that dream where you're falling off a cliff? That was probably me.
That was probably me.
Yeah.
That was me, Tim.
Something we've totally neglected to mention throughout this review is that they present the idea that when you have a dream, you are lightly connecting to an alternate version of yourself. Yeah. Which is how Wanda knows that her kids are real, is because she dreams of them every night.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting idea.
Interesting concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to know why there are no other Americas, because she's saying I'm the only one. There are no other me's, and the movie does absolutely zero to tell us why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea. And I understand that if there were a bunch of Americas running around, that would also create another absolutely massive gate key to a lot of weird contrivances, because it means that there's an infinite amount of Americas, and many, 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 many of them, too many to count probably, are capable of willfully hopping from one universe to another. So having too many is a huge plot problem, but having only one goes entirely unexplained.
No, yeah. And sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like they're gonna go probably the whole like Anakin route. You know what I'm saying? He was like a creation of the Force. Like she's some sort of manifestation of like a balance of the multiverse, or like something like that, or like she was created in some kind of way. So I feel like it's going to be something like that. Either some higher being somewhere created her as some way to balance, to counteract what's going on. Maybe things are getting out of hand in different universes.
I'm gonna let you finish. I love you, but I'm gonna let you finish. But even if in one universe they make the decision to create her, then in other universes they do too. In other universes she's successful, and in other universes she's not.
No,
this is the problem with branching out like that.
I'm not saying she got created in a universe. I'm saying it could be the possibility that something in between the universes, some sort of higher being, created her.
Like a Dormammu created her type being or something like that.
Yeah, some sort of being that like no one in the known universes can like understand or comprehend, created her for whatever means. That's the only thing that I could think of, because like, yeah, otherwise, like you said, she would necessarily exist in other universes. If she was made in one universe, then she would have to have been made in other universes. So the only way that she doesn't exist in other universes, without her killing herself off in all the other universes, is to be made outside of all the universes, or rather in between all the universes. That's where my mind goes to. And yeah, so anyway, I didn't mean to throw everything off, but that's just like
that's an interesting idea.
That is an interesting idea.
It actually makes me think. I don't know if you watched the 1990s animated Batman show, but in the 4th season there was an episode called Growing Pains, where I guess I'm going to spoil that, where Robin meets this little girl who's being chased by her father, and he's trying to save her, and comes to not necessarily like romantically, but really, really care about making sure that she's safe and she's okay. And it turns out her father is Clayface, and she's a piece of him.
Oh yeah, that episode. Yeah.
And she, like, once she's absorbed back into him, her sentience is gone. Like, she gained her own sentience, her own fear of him. but once she's a part of him again, she's gone. She's part of him. He can't just make another one. And I think that if America is something like that, that could be really interesting and compelling, where she's a piece of some sort of Dormammu-like creature that got its own sentience, and that's why there's only one of her, and that she's essentially like trying to get away from this creature that defies being bound to one dimension. I think that could be really interesting, and it's the only real way I can think of to, like, if the writers are good, better than me, I guess they could come up with like a better way to kind of cinch up the magic key syndrome that they've just kind of put on the table. I'd be interested in seeing like something like that, because to me, a plot point like that is morally ambiguous. The idea that she has gained her own thought processes and sentience, but she's not necessarily at the same time completely real. She came from something that if she goes back to it, she's gone, but she's back to where she was in the first place. And I think that's morally ambiguous and compelling enough to almost be a little bit frightening in a way, because if she was something like that, it could feel to Strange like he's losing a daughter, if that's the direction that their relationship kind of goes to, where this is his new Peter Parker, this is his new child protege, but she doesn't belong in any world.
Dang. Well, to wrap up my point on Wanda real quick, and then you guys can chime right in right after I'm done.
Okay.
I think that her arc is like, it's the best one of, no, I'm not going to say the best, but it's one of the best villain like buildups. Because at the end of the day, it seems like she's had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy through her parents' death, her brother's death, her husband or boyfriend, whatever, robot's death, her fake kid's death, and now this.
Yeah.
I think it's been like, you know, I honestly don't think they knew this was going to happen. Like, they knew all along since Age of Ultron, Multiverse of Madness, she was going to be the villain. That probably wasn't the case. But that being said,
sorry, guys. My brain went to a different place.
Okay. I'll finish this real quick then. I feel like the buildup since then, even though it might have like not been the original plan, I think it's so well put together. Like, the amazing sequences that we get, like, her character specifically is the horror element. Like, she
Wanda?
she just brings like,
absolutely.
It's obviously through Sam Raimi's direction and how we were talking about like the different like camera angles, the best shot, the best sequence is when she's getting up slowly. And it goes back and forth to her with
when
the kids.
She breaks through the shield because it's reflective. I was like, this is Raimi to the max. The contorting through and like
when you get the quick side shots of the door and then they look to the other side, I was like,
I loved her eye looking through the water. Like Sam did a good job of making her like a horror monster.
Yes. Oh, yes. Like that sequence too. Like, I think we talked about it earlier where they're just staring at the door, the horror cliche. And then she shows up like red eyes and everything. I'm like, this is like, she's a demon. This is not even,
when she just kind of like phased into the room and she's just with the eyes. I was like,
I didn't expect that. Like, I was expecting a jump scare, but I was like, I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't expect that, because I'm like, this is a horror movie cliche. I'm like, she's gonna and I'm like, oh god, that kind of got me. Because it's an MCU movie, and I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, sure.
This is Sam Raimi. He's trying to implement this.
The person I saw it with, it's funny because you guys both know him. He's not a fan of horror movies, and he really likes the first Doctor Strange movie. So when he saw this movie, he was honestly kind of disappointed because like he's put off by the elements of horror, honestly, like not even just slasher, just like horror in general. Like he'll be fine watching something like Jaws, but like when it's like the Book of the Dead, the Souls of the Damned, and Jason, Freddy, those sorts of things, although I would categorically kind of put those different. he's just not a fan. So he was kind of disappointed with the movie, but he liked some of the innovations.
I think that's going to be a lot of the division
I
with
liked
fans.
it more than him.
Yeah, I think I know. Is it Homeboy Patrick?
It's Homeboy Patrick. Yeah.
Yeah. He told me he was going to watch it with you. I felt like that too. When he said that, I was like, yeah.
Now
he's not going to like this.
I genuinely think there's a lot about this movie to like. I really do. But there's still some stuff we need to touch on we have not talked about yet. We have not talked very much about the Illuminati.
Yes, that's going to be the next thing.
In the cameos, yeah.
Yeah, yes. And in the trailer, they basically tell you without telling you that Patrick Stewart's in the movie. Like it's hella obvious. You know his voice. And when they interviewed him to ask about it, he's like, I don't know. I just get called in and I do things. And I'm like, okay, you don't show up to a movie set and not know what movie you're in. Give me a break, dude. You're lovable.
Before we move on to that, though, talk about what like your final thoughts on Wanda real quick. And then the next thing is going to be that we're going to talk about multiverse, Illuminati, cameos, all that stuff.
I feel like I've said most of what needs to be said. I think Sam did a good job making her like a horror villain, although at times I was like, stop hobbling, you can fly. It'll take the weight off your busted leg, just fly. Like I said, I think she's a really compelling villain in that her maternal instincts override everything else. Like she can't face her own contradictions because she needs to be with her kids. And Rich, I can't say too much without spoiling more or less WandaVision, but short story shorter, the origin of those kids and who they are and why they exist in her mind is from WandaVision. And ultimately, in this movie, they're yelling at her. They're not real. You don't have them. And she just has a complete inability to cope with that. And I like that because that's the part that creates a sympathetic villain. You lose the sympathy when she's like, I will kill this child to be with my children. I will murder these sorcerers to be with my children. Sam did a really good job making her not just a monster, but also kind of a presence. Like I'm looking at the screen being like, no, don't do it. But at the same time, understanding why he did it. That scene where he just approaches that guy in his mind and says, run. I liked that. I really liked that because that's one of those things where in that moment, she wasn't necessarily a monster. She was a presence in someone else's mind that was strong enough to pull him away and give her the advantage she needed. Like a very manipulative. I think she's a really good villain because she's sympathetic. I don't think she's the best villain that Marvel's ever had. If I had to pick right now who I think the best villain the MCU has had, I think I'd probably say Kilgrave. I think Kilgrave from Jessica Jones is probably still, I think, the best villain in the MCU. I think he was an incredible villain, honestly. I certainly think he's the scariest villain for sure. Have you seen Jessica Jones at all, Rich?
Yeah, I watched all of it. I obsessed over it for a little minute, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he's the most frightening villain in the MCU still currently. I think Wanda is, in terms of scariest, not necessarily best, but scariest villain, Wanda might be the runner up simply because not only do you understand why she's doing what she's doing, you also understand why the contradictions don't matter to her, and why she'll run over anybody to be with her boys. When my sister, she has 3 boys, so she's gonna watch this movie and be like, "Go Wanda."
Team moms.
If anything kept her from her kids, she would rip them apart. It doesn't matter.
I think that's the thing too. It's like it could have been really cheesy, like the line, like, I'm not a monster, I'm a mother. Like that could have been so unbelievably like, okay, this is just dumb. But I believed it. I believed her. And
it was in the right,
it more scary.
That idea was in the right hands. And it was, Sam's hands were good and her hands were good. Her acting in this movie was incredible. I will say, I think I wanted a bit more from the confrontation between the two of them when she meets her other self. Like the line of her saying, know that they will be loved. It is good. It is powerful. But I wanted, to some extent, you can argue away the idea that these two need to have a conversation because they probably have some kind of mental link where words don't even need to be said because of who they are. But I don't think the audience is necessarily able to extrapolate that from what was on screen in front of them. I would have liked for it to been more like, I can't imagine what you're going through to be the only one unlucky enough to have these boys as a part of your life. And I'm so sorry, but I am their mother here. I need to be with them, and nobody should understand that more than you. Like, something needed to be there and physically said and heard by the audience. That was more, I think more should have been said, because it made it feel like all she said was, know that they will be loved. Boom, she goes back to her dimension and she's like, hey, I'm going to flip around and destroy the entire temple so the dark hole doesn't tempt anyone anymore. I wanted more to her transformation, kind of back to the light, as it were.
Yeah.
And
no, I get that. I think there could have been more emotion behind that.
I think that more thorough transformation could have come through I think a more thorough conversation between the two Wandas, because nope, they make points of saying like Mr. Fantastic says, hey, I have a family, I know what you're going through, and to some extent he does, but to another he doesn't, because she's essentially her argument in her own mind is that her maternal instincts are stronger than anybody else, but she can't make that argument against herself. There is no other, like, that should be the character herself, should be the one to make her stop, and ultimately it is, but I wanted more from it.
Yeah, for me with Wanda, because I hadn't seen, like, the thing is I didn't see WandaVision, but like I feel like, yeah, I feel like I didn't need to in order to understand this film. Like, I feel like it would have added context to it, but like, to me, like, this made sense. And that's because, to me, Wanda has always been a bad guy. Right? So like, even in
that's interesting. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so even in what was it? Was it Infinity War where it was her and Vision when they were together, or was that
that's Civil War, Infinity War? Well, yes. No, more so Infinity War. They were like full on together.
Yeah, because that's when Thanos, his people came after, Vision. Yeah, so like, even then, right? So in Infinity War, like, she doesn't care about the Avengers. She doesn't care about anybody. Like, she just, she understandably just wants to have her life and be with Vision. You know what I'm saying? Like you guys said, she took so many huge L's through her life up until that point.
It's true.
From other people, they had nothing to do with her, but she lost everything because of other people. And so, yeah, it's like, it made sense. But even like when she went to fight, it wasn't because she was like a good guy or whatever. Like, for me, it always just felt like, I mean, if you destroy this place, like, you destroy me too. And like, I'm not going to let that happen. You know what I mean? Even during those, like, kind of hero moments or whatever, when it was like her and all the other ladies like fighting together, fighting all the baddies and stuff. It was like, yeah, but she's always been a free agent. And like, nothing ever indicated otherwise to me. Like, she always, sure, she would like fight alongside the quote good guys or whatever, but like, she never was one of them. And so when it came to this film, and that was another thing I wanted to say too, it always irritated me because not that, but like it always irritated me that in the films, like they always hinted at how powerful Scarlet Witch was. You would get like a small glimpse, but they never went full out. And it always bothered me because I felt like she always got downplayed. Even though like I don't know anything about the comics or whatever, but like I just always felt like they always dialed her down. I felt like she was a character that needed more respect. And then to go into this film and to see this, I'm like, yes, this makes sense. This is how powerful she actually is. And I feel like they really made her a threat in a way that that made sense to me. Because I'm like, here you have Scarlet Witch who can do virtually anything. She could do virtually anything. And like you got to see her do virtually anything. And like that was something that was like super cool to me. And then with her doing the whole, I thought it was really cool as well when Doctor Strange, when he was talking about the dream, he was telling Wong about the dream, and Wong was like, wait, like what did you see? And he was like, they were like runes or something. And he was like, that's witchcraft. And I was like, oh, hold up. I'm like, wait. So because like that's the first time, as far as I know, that there's ever been like and maybe they like made that distinction in WandaVision. So maybe that's why I was like naive to that. But I was like, oh snap. So there's like a difference between magic and like just straight up witchcraft. Yeah. Like witchcraft is like this, and like
without getting too much into it, that originates in WandaVision.
Yeah. Okay,
cool. The beginning
really
of differentiating those two things is a part of WandaVision.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was something that was cool to me because I was like, oh snap. Like that to me was like a reveal. And it was a cool reveal because I'm like, oh, so there's more to this. There's a larger spectrum. And like the witchcraft is obviously the super bad, scary stuff. And, you know, she's doing all this, whatever, what was it called? Now I forget, but like when she's able to like use the body of the
astral project, the
dreamwalking.
Yeah, dreamwalking. Yeah, dreamwalking. And I was like, oh snap. Okay. So because it's like that's on the whole level of like pulling the energy from the, I forget what it's called, not the dark world, but
Darkhold.
Yeah. Well, from like in the first Doctor Strange movie, like when it was like pulling the energy from the
dark dimension.
Yeah, the dark dimension. Like that's like, okay, we're in that kind of thing. It's not that exact thing, but it's like, you know, it's similar to that, right? Where it's like, okay, now we're starting to get into some like very strange territory. Pun unintended. We're starting to get into some very strange territory here where, you know, like there are more like just crazy things that you can do. And that this Darkhold, that was another thing for me too. It's like, I wished so bad that like we could have explored more of that world. And like when they went to that place that like, you know, none of the magic people go to because it's like a dark place. And I was like, I wish we could have seen more of that because there was like all these engravings everywhere. And, you know, there's obviously like the weird bad creatures that like got killed because they got thrown off the cliff. I was like, okay.
Wait, all right. What place are you talking about right now?
Where like the throne, her throne.
Yeah, her throne.
Yeah. Up on the mountain. Okay.
Yeah, up on the mountain. And here you had these, you know, crazy, scary beings, whatever the heck they were. And then Wong just threw them off the cliff. And it's like, all right, that's the end of that.
It kind of reminded me of the monsters from Shazam.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like super demonic looking guys.
So I was like, I wish that we kind of got to see more of that and to like understand a little bit more of that. Like, okay, the people that like, or person that set this up is like okay, it was for her. How the heck did he know? Like, what? It begs so many questions to me of like, how did they know of her? Like,
Well, that's the
and
thing. That's conveniences. That was my other issue
yeah,
with the film, where it's like, oh, okay, oh, there's a door to the Book of Ashanti
right.
right there, and she has the watch to perfectly. I
Yeah.
was like, I hate when movies do that,
Yeah.
and it brought my score kind of down because that stuff really does bother me. It's like you guys have years,
Yeah,
to come up with this stuff, and then you're like, watch, boom.
Like
I'm like,
when
great,
or
like move the plot along, right? But
or like when Wanda tells Wong, "Hey, why can't you take us all the way there?" And he just says, "My magic can only take us so far." I'm kind of like, okay,
yeah,
to me, that's not like Wong can't do it. That's the writers being like, I don't want to come up with a reason why not.
What I liked though was like, oh God, please don't have like a montage sequence of them walking. And I'm like, thank God the writer's like, Wanda's just gonna be like, man, frick this ish.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this to you before, Jack. I gave the MCU the benefit of the doubt when it came to Endgame, because in Infinity War, when they did the whole thing in where Doctor Strange was like, I saw 14 million possible futures. How many did we win in? One. I was like, I'd said before, I was afraid that in Endgame, everybody was going to avoid using common sense to make really important decisions and just have the audience be like, oh, it's because they're not supposed to, because it's not the one path they're supposed to take, and use it to kind of like cover up sloppy writing. And this is like I said, just kind of having these magic keys on the table now. This is like kind of the jumbo version of that. Oh God, no. Now we could just beat every threat. I mean,
can we just talk? Sorry, what you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say, collapsing the Darkhold does kind of close a branch in a way, because now it can't necessarily be used for good or for ill. So I was kind of glad to have that bit of closure, even though I don't think Wanda's dead. I don't know. It was just, it's almost like the writers are going to decide if she's alive or dead based on whatever comes next. It's almost like the writers haven't even decided, is what it felt like to me. Those are the kinds of things that, I'd like more closure on those.
And the last thing, I guess, for the Wanda section is I loved that because you were talking about Richard the Dream Walking. The most Sam Raimi thing about the whole film, and it brought me back to Spider-Man like 1 vibes, when he's like writing out his outfit. He's like figuring that out. There's a montage of like fade-ins and fade-outs of him drawing. There's the costume look. When Mordo was talking about what she was about to do. And then you get these cool little montage sequence of her doing this. Doctor Strange and America are listening in. And then there's a circle with her in the middle. And then Mordo appears in the middle of that. I was like, I miss this feel. Like, it felt like I was a kid again, weirdly enough, where I'm like, I feel like, yeah, this is definitely from the Spider-Man movies. This is definitely like his kind of stylistic choices. I just thought that was really cool. So when he said dream walking, I was like, I have to mention that. But I know we really want to talk about, and this is kind of very natural to go into this next subject, because we're going to talk about the multiverse and cameos, but we'll start with the Illuminati in this section.
Sure.
Wanda kills everybody.
Oh my God.
And I understand why some people would be like, they killed everybody. It's like, I don't care. I want to see her murder everything in sight. Like, it's called the multiverse. I'm sorry. Like, I think they're testing how people feel about John Krasinski being as Mr. Fantastic. And people are like, yes, guess what? It's a different version. It's okay, guys.
I don't think there's a point in testing it. He's a safe choice.
Oh, yeah. And I think he's going to direct it. But that's another thing. I think he's going to direct it because the guy who was going to direct it dropped out of it last week.
Yeah, he did. John Watts dropped out.
Why? Because
3 Spider-Mans is a lot, man. I don't know.
I think that's such a BS excuse. He's like, I'm tired, while he's directing a film right now with Brad Pitt. I'm like, nah, Kevin Feige did this. He was like, you see this piece of paper right here? Pretend there's a number on here. This is what I'll give you for right now. I'll give you like the next, I'll give you Secret Wars. I want John Krasinski to star and direct this. Please do me a solid. And he was like, yeah, I guess we can make up a reason, be like, I'm tired. And that's exactly what happened. Why? Because this is just a super random fact. I'll probably put a section about this, about just John Krasinski, but he was supposed to direct A Quiet Place Part 3 or the spinoff, whichever one. I wonder why he's not directing it.
I don't know. I haven't seen the second one yet, so
it's so good. It's so good. John Krasinski is amazing. But yeah, they murder my boy, and I felt the scream and his head blowing up. And speaking of heads blowing up,
came apart like a Twizzler, man.
Black Bolt. He's like, like a freaking Neo sequence right there. The Matrix happening. Like, oh my God.
His death was the most graphic death in the movie.
It's not just the most graphic death in the movie. I think it's the most graphic death in the MCU.
I don't know about that because I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in its entirety, and there's some moments in that I don't count that crappy
show. That show is not canon to me. It's so bad.
That was a good show.
I will be a stan. How much you hate you don't hate Force Awakens, but how much you dislike things in Force Awakens. I feel that way about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was like, this did nothing for me.
Did you watch the whole thing?
I watched a good part of season 1 and 2, and then I watched the best part to me was the Ghost Rider stuff. That was the only thing I was in for. That was good stuff. Was Ghost Rider. And then after that, I was like, I guess I'll just see the season or series, whatever finale.
That show had a lot of really good moments that the MCU is kind of hell-bent on like trying to make non-canon because like.
And there's a reason why, because it sucked.
No, it didn't. There were some episodes that I was like, okay, we're kind of stagnant. We're kind of meandering, blah, blah, blah. But there were so many really good episodes. And because they kind of followed the effects of like what the MCU did to their show, Winter Soldier was huge because that's when they find out there's a bunch of Hydra operatives in S.H.I.E.L.D. and it totally flipped that show upside down in a fantastic way. A lot of people want to write the show off because it's a spin-off and not necessarily a mainline entry. And yeah, it has its funky moments. It has its goofy moments. It has its star-crossed lovers that just have so much trouble being together it almost becomes comedy at some point, and even they are just like, of course we have to split apart for 2 more years. Like it's got those moments, but when the show's good, it's great. And a lot of the actors did an incredible job in that movie. Why am I Ming-Na Wen? Ming oh boy, why am I blanking so much? She voiced Mulan in the original Mulan. She
she's done a lot of stuff.
It's Ming-Na Wen. Her character is fantastic. She's not quite like, she's like maybe just under Black Widow level of operative, but her abilities are essentially in that vein, and her character is fantastic. I love her. Phil Coulson is great in the show. I love him, and the actor does an incredible job still keeping up with playing him. Like I said, when the show's good, it's great, but the MCU just keeps on doing things that make its canon really shoddy to try to stick to, and I don't know why they're so hell-bent on doing that. Awesome.
I'm sorry that people don't like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, it's a show that was worse though.
No, that's
Inhumans.
The thing, Jack. People do like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I bet they do. They're somewhere hiding under rocks. They're somewhere underneath this. The show ended a couple of years ago,
so you know we had our fill, and we're just not really talking about it. But I mean, when people want to come out of the woodwork and be like, "What, that little show? Yeah, it was bad." No, it wasn't bad. I don't think it was like. I think it could have ended better. But I think seasons like 2, 3, and 4, I think were peak Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And when it was good, it was really good.
Well, to a better group, a better thing, Illuminati, even though they were very, very short on screen time. I honestly had no issues with what they did. It's not a movie about introducing the Illuminati and then them making their film next. Like that to me wasn't the agenda. So I was like, it's obviously about Wanda and Doctor Strange in America. And how do these characters fit in? And that's my worry with cameos in films. It's like I said earlier on, it's empty calories. It's not really needed. With these cameos, they made sense. It made sense for the plot, and it made sense for the whole point of it, which was Doctor Strange and America Chavez. You guys are actually, Doctor Strange specifically, you are the issue. You are the problem, and we are the the wise people, so much for being wise, they're like, yeah, we're more worried about you. We can handle that little witch. No problem.
I was like,
you should have thought about that more.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
No, you can't.
I don't know,
these
man.
are supposed to be like the high society, the highest of knowledge. Like these people should know like as much as the TVA. Like at least that's my knowledge of it. Like they make these big decisions, right, for humanity. And then they make that decision. A little bit convenient, I don't know, but I was still kind of fine with it because at the end of the day, Scarlet Witch is, at least in this context for the MCU, she is one of the most powerful characters in that universe.
Yeah, for sure.
And just what they did, the brutal kills, how they handled, and some people are already complaining about they killed the men just so they could have a women fight.
Oh, I've never heard that complaint yet.
It's like,
That's
come
me.
on.
That's a new
There's people out there who have been like, it's stupid. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I really wish I would have seen more of his abilities, like him stretching and everything. That would have been cool, but it really wasn't about that. I think how they handled their deaths, like Captain Carter.
Yeah. Dude, okay. Because I have a lot of feelings when it comes to the Illuminati. When they said Illuminati, like where are you taking me? Oh, to the Illuminati. I was like, oh, okay, all right.
Jay-Z's gonna show up.
I'm like, I know, right? I'm like, here we go. So now we're talking about the Illuminati, and now we're like, and so I was like, okay, that's number one. But then number two, when I saw them, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna lie, like I just wish we were in this universe. Like, I'm not gonna like when I saw it, I was like, I would enjoy being in this universe. Like if the MCU was whatever number this is, like that would be very cool because I want to see this interaction. Like I want to see this, Professor X. I want to see this Mr. Fantastic. I want to see Captain Carter. I want to see all these people. And so yeah, that was the thing that happened. And then when they all died, I was like, so like we're just not gonna have these people in this arrangement again. Like this is it, and like they're all dead now. Yep. Okay, that kind of sucks. That's the thing that bothered me about their deaths. However, what I will say is the way that they all died, it made sense because as like, again, I keep saying the word egotistical, but like as egotistical as Doctor Strange is, they were that and more because of the kinds of decisions that they make all the time, and because they're like the smartest beings in their known universe or whatever. They thought that they knew better, and like they obviously didn't. Why they wouldn't listen, and why I'm like, if you know all this stuff, then you should know that like there are certain beings in other universes that are gonna like tear you to shreds, which literally happened in Mr. Fantastic's case. Which I like, and that's why I say like it made sense. I'm like, what is a stretchy man going to do to Scarlet Witch? Nothing. What are you doing? It's like
a big hug.
Yeah,
big hug.
It's like that same criticism of like, what is Hawkeye gonna do against Thanos? Like, what are we talking about here? What is Star-Lord gonna do against Thanos? You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things. So like it made sense that he's like, oh, I'm stretchy, and then he's gonna stretch. He's gonna get like shredded. That makes sense. It's like this. Now I forgot his name, but like the screaming guy. I mean, technically he didn't scream, but Black Bolt. It's like it's so stupid that Mr. Fantastic is like, oh yeah, you don't want to, get into a conversation with him or whatever. And then it's like, because you just gave away what he could do. And so now she's like, oh, okay, too easy. I'll just make it where he doesn't have a mouth. And then just the fact that it made sense because it's like whenever like something happens, like you try to do that thing. So if you get impaired in a certain kind of way, like, if something gets in your eye or whatever, then you like start trying to, like see whether or not your vision is back, right? Like this kind of stuff, right? So it made sense that when his mouth was gone, that he would try to scream. Like it made sense that he would try to like talk or something. But it was in that moment that I was like, oh yeah, this is, I mean, I already gotten hints before, but like it was in that moment, like with the way he died, I was like, oh yeah, this is something else. Like this is very, like, people are gonna feel a whole different kind of way about this film based off of that death. Because the thing about it is, right at the top of the film, in like the first 15 minutes, we literally see the eye get ripped out of a monster. Like it, and it wasn't like other MCU films where it's like you see it implied, right? You see it begin to rip.
It was pretty gnarly.
But you don't see it. Yeah, it's like, and I heard people in the theater like, oh, because it's like, and even myself, I was like, yo, what? Because I was not expecting that. And it's like literally in the first 15 minutes, you see his entire eye come out in the thing, all of that. And I was like, yo, what? And then when we see later on, you see when Doctor Strange is fighting that like corrupted version of himself.
Yeah.
And he lands on the gate, but you see him land on the gate.
Yep.
It's not something where you see him launched out and then
it's not
they
a
cut away.
It's not a shadow.
Yeah.
It's like it's there.
You literally see him get skewered.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yo, okay. But then when you saw, dang, I already forgot his name, Black Bolt. When you see Black Bolt like try to talk, and then you just see that impact, and then the ooze, I was like, yo, and then see his head smack against the ground. I was like, oh my God. And then it's like, okay, then you see Mr. Fantastic, which again, it's like, what is he gonna do? He's gonna try to stretch. And then all she got, I'm like, why would you do that? You just saw her seal the mouth of someone, and he blew his own brains out.
Yeah,
like,
the only one that stood a chance was Captain Marvel. She was the only one.
And that's why it made sense that it was just down to the two. And the thing about it was like, she was fighting her like for real. Like she was giving her a runaround for real, to the point of where they just like they had to have her die by having the statue fall on her. I was like,
which was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
It's like Captain Marvel dies with like, the statue.
I think she'd survive just fine.
Yeah. You see her hand, it's just like,
it was like, okay. Yeah, no, she's really dead. Because I definitely had that moment where I was like, but then they showed the hand. I was like, okay, that's their way of saying she died. Okay.
She could have cut her in half. Like the way they killed Captain Carter, like even though like that's kind of the context, like what you're saying, it's like, like we saw these things happen. That would have made it rated R. But just the context of, you hear the slice, you see the expression of she's gone. And then you see the shield with the blood. Yeah. I'm like, why is this movie more violent than Venom? Because that's the kind of violence I want to see in Venom. But they always cut away. They always do this crap. But with this film, the amount of viciousness that they were edging their way. They were edging their way, honestly. I think like it wasn't like so close to a rated R. I don't want to say that, but they were trying to.
This was not R rated.
Yeah, there was still though, like I could tell Kevin was really like, I think the whole point of this film is to see how far they can go with this genre. And obviously we're already seeing people react, people being disappointed. Like our mutual friend is like, yeah, I'm not into that. And I think it is a personal preference thing. And it is a risk. It is.
Cause it's a PG-13. It's PG-13, but it sits somewhere different in the PG-13. You know what I mean? So it's like, if there's a scale of PG-13 where it's like, it's right at the beginning of that scale, and so it's like still kind of like in the kiddie land, right? It's still safe for like the kids and stuff. This is venturing farther out into the waters where it's like not on that edge where it's like on the edge of rated R, but it's like a notch or two like right below that, where it's like as far as the gruesomeness goes.
Yeah, parents are not going to take their 10-year-old kids to this movie, I think.
No, they will.
They will.
Well, they will, and then they'll be surprised because
like, oh my God, no!
Even when it came to that whole horror thing. So like for me in my notes, like I found that there was like kind of like I see it in like a diamond. There's kind of like four points or four different kind of like genres that were in it. There was not quite genres, but like just different like feels to it. So there's like a grounded feel, but then there's also like a cartoonish or comic bookish kind of thing where it's like, oh, the giant, monster with tentacles running around terrorizing a city, right? Like stuff like that. Things that were just, just again cartoonish, like comic bookish. But then there was like a horror thing where it was like, yo, this is like kind of scary. Like this is very scary. Like you guys talked about before, when they're in that like corridor underneath the river or whatever, and she's like chasing them. Absolutely horror. Like she obviously could have just flown, but she's like limping. Got that like demon zombie-esque thing, pops up. Like that was super crazy. The whole like mirror thing, like, yo, cover all the reflections. And then she like breaks through that glass and it's like all contorted. Like that was crazy. But then there's also like that morbid part too. So there's a horror, then there's the morbid where it's like people just dying. Like things are dying and people are dying. It's just death after death after death. And I think that like that's where it kind of sits in that like that, close to the deep end of the pool of the PG-13, where I think that like people are not used to that in the MCU stuff, like in majority of it. And the things that people most associate with the MCU, like they're not used to that side of the pool. It's like not the kiddie pool. It's not where everything is light and like beautiful. It's like, okay, we're getting to seeing people die for real. And then like my last thing with the cameos and with the Illuminati thing was with Mordo. I touched on it before of like how seeing his character in this way was like very disappointing because I thought they were going to like follow up to what they did in Doctor Strange and where they were going with this character.
Yeah.
That was number one. But like number two, I'm like, what happened to him? I'm like, he and Doctor Strange had a fist fight and then Doctor Strange jumped up the wall and then we never saw Mordo again. And the thing is, I'm like,
it's not even the same Mordo.
Yeah. I'm like, I understand that like it's a Mordo from a different universe. So like, he's not the same Mordo that trained Doctor Strange. He's not the same one that was like doing all this martial arts stuff, but it's Mordo. And like, why is it that like Doctor Strange could just, and that's the thing too, he just did like a little hop between the walls and just jumped up. I'm like, I don't understand why Mordo just is still down there. Like it's not even like it's like a pit of despair or like the infinite pit. It just wasn't.
I thought when they fell, I thought it was going to be like, oh, it's like a 20-foot drop. It was like that moment when Spider-Man 2 when Aunt May's holding on a thing like, and then she like drops her legs. I'm like that was like 4 feet. What the heck? They're not like, even. Oh no, the cuffs, or like maybe like 2 or 3. Yeah, and I was just like, yeah, I can understand that complaint because I feel the same way too. I loved how they ended his character. I was like, oh, he's gonna be the next villain. Maybe not 2, maybe 3, and maybe that'll happen.
Right.
But I don't know. Like it just felt like a disconnect. Like I still was glad to see Chiwetel Ejiofor. He is one of the best actors out there. He is spectacular. I love that guy. But I'm so glad to see him. But they just kind of ended it. And you're right. He was just there in the pit, and it was like, so you're not going to get up. You're not going to use. Actually, now that I think about it, remember he had the cuff. Remember he had the cuff.
Do we all know what that is?
Like what? What is that?
Parks and Rec.
Oh my gosh!
Where Chris Pratt writes a song about falling in the big pit in their town. We all fell in the pit.
Oh my god! What was their band's name again?
It changed so many times, but they stuck with Mouse Rat most of the time.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yes, Mouse Rat, baby. But
we were 4-skin, and then our drummer left, so we were 3-skin.
Oh my god, I love that show. I freaking love that show. But Mordo, I think the reason why he couldn't get out, I mean, maybe he could have hot skipped and jumped. Obviously, he used his body to like launch off and then get to the other wall and then do karate thing. It was awesome. I love that fight scene because it was just their bare skills. It was just their hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
I dug that. And I respected that. I'm like, oh, how can Doctor Strange fight without his abilities? Oh, he can fight because he obviously learned this at Cumberbatch.
Yeah, you train.
I liked that. I like that they established that he's still kind of a BA and he doesn't need the hand motions. But I think it's because of that handcuff, because it still dampened his powers. Because remember when he had to go up to Christine and she had that little like weird thing and it's like disconnected and he took it off. I think that's probably why he was still stuck down there. I mean, given he probably could have figured out a way like to launch himself maybe if he really, really tried. But I think that was also like a convenient thing where it's like, oh no, he's there until next time.
What I thought about was like, boy, oh boy, how shocked and surprised is he going to be when he finally gets up there and goes to find all his little buddies, rip the shred. One person ripped the shreds, other with their brains blown out from the inside. Another one crushed by a huge thing, and then the other one completely dismembered.
He's like, well, I guess I'm in charge now.
Right. I'm like,
I actually really like the sequence where Charles is in Wanda's mind and finds.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Trapped.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
I really like that sequence where the shot where the red fog is rolling in behind Patrick Stewart was one of my favorite shots in the movie. I just thought it looked incredible.
That was incredible for me. I felt that was brutal. That was brutal too, because it was like
sorry, never mind spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything, but they just don't like Professor X, I guess, when it comes to Fox and Marvel and how they treat him, because they just be killing him.
It was another instance for me of where, you know, like you guys said, it was like a lot of just like, I don't know, like writing devices where it was like, well, because I was like, this is like Professor X. Listen, man, if I know something is coming, because that's the thing. It was like he knew that her alter ego was coming, right? He knew that Scarlet Witch was coming. And then he just like stood there. He stood there for like ever. And then it just can't. I'm like, what are you doing? Get out of there.
Well, like, he's in someone's mind and he's trying to save them. Part of me understood because I think Charles didn't want to like abandon her. Like if he had the power to bring her back to her normal self, he would try. I think he would try. And yes, I'm not going to get into, like I said, Charles Xavier is a part of Logan. I'm not going to say whether he lives or dies in that because you haven't seen it, Rich. But that being said, he has died as this character more than once. But which is really,
I was like, they're gonna do it again. Watch, they're gonna do it again.
And in The Last Stand, circa 2006, X-Men, he was also killed by another telekinetic. Although brutal. Differently. He was just. Did you see that movie way back when, Rich? X-Men 3.
I don't even really remember it much, but I did watch it.
She starts to become Dark Phoenix, pulls him out of the chair,
that's right.
Disintegrates him.
Yeah, he just stares at somebody.
That was crazy.
I forgot who it was. Like he like disintegrates. Yeah, he disintegrates. I was like, that is just terrifying.
Yeah, that was tough.
I was like, man, this character just cannot catch a break. Again, I won't spoil Logan, so I'm only gonna say he dies at least twice.
Genius movie, genius film. Love that
minimum
movie.
of 2 times. Good movie. You really should see it, Rich. It's very, very good. It was, I'll put it this way. Jack would call Logan an elevated superhero movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Batman, Logan, they're like in the same, like, I love them too much. I don't know which one's better. I love them both.
The movie was actually nominated for adapted screenplay to its credit. Granted, I do kind of think that the Oscars are a little wonky when it comes from one category to another. I think part of me can be like, okay, I can see where they're coming from this category. And then when they show me their nominees for like best animated movie, I'm like, where are you coming from? Like what was it? They nominated like, I don't know, whatever the big Disney Pixar movie was that year. And then they were like, and also Boss Baby. And I was
Boss Baby, that's right. I was like, what the heck?
Slow in the same year. Granted, I didn't see Your Name, but I can guarantee that your name is better than Boss Baby. And they didn't like, really? Boss Baby over. I think the other movie they put was the one where Channing Tatum is a bull. And I was like, okay, guys. Like, that's one of the categories they just seem to not really be able to gather a decent knowledge base to have control of. But no, it was nominated for screenplay, and it did actually a pretty good job. I liked Logan a lot. Guys, there's a whole chunk of this movie we haven't talked about yet. There's a fat chunk of this movie we haven't talked about, which is the confrontation between the two Doctor Stranges, where they go to the world that's falling apart.
Yes.
And there's a Doctor Strange there that they go to, and he opens up his creepy third eye on his forehead, and they fight.
That was probably me. Love that line.
It was a really cool idea, but I had a really hard time not laughing during that fight. Like, it was
okay.
It was really difficult to not crack up during that fight for me,
dude. Because me and my wife we were cracking up during it too. And okay, because that was one of the height of the cartoonish moments for me.
Yeah,
like that same. That like I might as well have been watching Tom and Jerry. Like when they started doing the stuff with the musical notes, I was like, okay, it's an interesting idea, but like, what is going on right now? Like,
I think that was the campiness for me. That was the campiness. And I was like, I was eating that up. I was like, what is this? Like, they're just still sticking with this theme. They're like, Beethoven now.
Yeah, they committed to that. Like, they would not let that thing go. And for me, it's like, okay, the third eye thing as well. Like, okay, that wasn't a problem for me.
We will get to the third eye thing.
Yeah,
holy
moly. It just, for me, it was like, okay, it was like how everyone felt about like that first version of Sonic that they were gonna do. That's how that third eye felt to me. I was like, why did they do it like this? Like, I know that there was a better way that they could have done this. Like, it literally feels like they took a copy of his eye, like they rotoscoped it and then just put it in the middle. Like, it was like
it did. Yeah, look weird. It looked like it was pasted in.
I was like,
it was surprising.
What even is this? But like the whole thing with the Doctor Strange and him killing off all the other Stranges, it was very much, I don't know if you guys saw the movie from way back when.
Wait, killing off the other Stranges? Did I miss something?
I'm pretty sure, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what he was saying, right? Because he was like, if you
the other version, right? The one that founded the Illuminati, he was the one that was killing.
I thought you were saying like all of the Stranges are dead. I was like, wait.
No. But like, yeah, it was like, okay, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie The One with Jet Li, and it just
heard about it.
Yeah, there was so much drowning pool in it. How could I resist?
Right. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of that, obviously, where it's like, I mean, granted, in that movie he was killing off the other versions of himself to get stronger.
Yeah.
But it was like the idea of like, you know, other Stranges dying, getting killed off. But I don't know, it was like, for me it was like, what is the point? Like, what's the point of this Strange? Like, what is he doing and why is he doing it? Right?
The one in the broken world?
Yeah. I mean, I liked him. I mean, I was going to say I like that whole sequence, but like, that would be a lie. Because there was a lot with, like I said, that fight was just, it was another movie.
I gotta talk about that in a minute.
But
to talk about that fight.
But as far as that whole vibe, like that whole conversation, that like interaction, I did love it. I loved what was going on like in that world. I love the dilapidated like feel. I love that unhinged, kind of crazed Doctor Strange. Like, I loved that darkness because it was like, you know, really kind of a foil to Doctor Strange, you know, the 616 Doctor Strange, where he really had to confront like that side of him, like that he so desperately wants to believe like doesn't exist, right? Because he believes everything he does is right and everything that he does is, you know, the proper calculation. But like he had to confront, like, no, like there's a bit of that that's like crazy. And like I am a version that like went off the deep end, you know? And like I know I went off the deep end and it doesn't matter. Like you're not gonna beat me, I'm gonna kill you, and that's that. You know what I mean? And like I like that. I like the fact that there wasn't a like they weren't necessarily trying to like, well, I know 616 Doctor Strange was trying to like get help from that Doctor Strange, but it wasn't a thing where they were necessarily trying to reconcile.
Mhm.
Like the other Doctor Strange was like, yeah, like I wanted more, I tried to get more, and it screwed everything up. But it is what it is, and this is just me. And if you try to like stop me, you try to do whatever X, Y, and Z, like it's just
And that
not
was
going
such
to
a
happen.
no, that was a nice tie into What If too, because
Yeah.
there's a certain episode that is to me the best one.
Yeah, everyone says that's the best one.
It's
I haven't seen it
incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I won't ruin it, but there's definitely a connection, I feel like, to that specific Strange, to that episode.
Yeah.
I think, and that's what everybody had theories of, and I think they didn't really like fully say this is what it is, but I feel like fans who have watched it, we get the gist.
They know.
But
I know.
But that fight, yeah, I liked the last thing I'll touch on this because I know Tim, you want to talk about it. Is the when Doctor Strange hits that certain note on the piano. If I don't know why, but it gave me like this. Yet again, it gave me like a horror vibe. Like like those moments in horror movies when somebody's like looking around. That's the certain note that I feel like happens.
Yeah.
What's happening? I loved that. I thought that was a nice touch. But then they kept on going with it. And then everyone in the theater was dying when this happened. The little harp. Bing. I was like, that was kind of stupid funny. I can see why people were laughing at that moment because it's like, what is this? What's happening right now?
All right. Let me know when I can be cut loose.
You cut loose?
Okay.
Like, yes, go ahead. Yes. Sorry.
To me, this is going to sound, what I have to say is going to sound silly and trite, but these are some of the kinds of things that just honestly just kind of drive me bonkers. I did not understand the terms and conditions of this fight. I did not understand the terms and conditions of this fight at all. Like, and if the terms and conditions of this fight are as they were presented, then it should have been really easy for our Strange to win. It shouldn't have honestly even really been a fight. Essentially what happens is like, so there's sheet music. Was it on the piano? Was it stationed at the piano? I don't remember, but there was sheet music. And the Doctor Stranges start to animate the notes that are drawn on the paper. So essentially meaning that they can animate ink as it is drawn, and they use the notes and throw them at each other and have like a Music Ball Z beam battle, like a Goku versus Vegeta beam battle made out of music notes. Doctor Strange, our Doctor Strange, also he then sees a harp and magically plucks the strings and creates a note, and this singular note floats into the beam of notes colliding in the middle of the room and is apparently the strongest note in the room and just makes that fight stop, and it explodes and they go flying. And I was like, okay, so we can animate notes on the page and we can animate notes that we create. If I was 616 Doctor Strange and I knew I could do that, I would be mashing my hand on the piano right next to me, creating hundreds of notes within a few seconds and just absolutely annihilate this fight. there was no reason given to tell me that the harp note is stronger than the piano note. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, there is a ranking here. There is a tier list that says the harp overrides the piano and the piano is weaker than the harp. So now I'm like, what, how strong are the drums? How strong is the piccolo? How strong is the penny whistle? Like, I'm like, there's like this tier list of magical influence that instruments have, and the harp is above the piano. But I was like I just did not understand the terms and conditions of this fight at all. And I know part of me is hi cat, and I know part of me is supposed to just like you have a friend. I know part of me is supposed to just suspend my disbelief and just go along for the ride. I am a viewer who has a hard time turning his brain off. I will be the first, maybe second, to admit it. I have a hard time turning my brain off, but I was really just to me, that was more bonkers than any of the multiverse hopping, because like the rules of this fight as they were played out dictated it should have been really easy for R. Strange to win, because if he could animate notes, not just that were on the page, he could also animate them via the sound that they create. Just mash your hand on the piano, create a bunch of notes, slice them up, incapacitate them, whatever, call it a day. It was such a weird fight as it was presented, and it just should not have been. It shouldn't have been a struggle. That's what I think.
Yeah, the parameters like weren't set on like I don't know. It's like, for me, like a big issue that I had with the film was like power scaling. It was like one moment someone was incredibly and I know like it's a common thing. It's just like a writing thing, but like, you know, at one moment someone was like all powerful, and then next moment like they can't run, or they can't, you know what I'm saying? They get beat by something super stupid. It's like, yeah, it's like, what are we talking about here? And like, for me, this cat, man, for me, it's like, you know, again, with that fight, I'm like, okay, because for me, I kind of thought the other way. I would have thought that the guy, I'm like, he has the dark hold. Like, what are we doing here? Here's a Doctor Strange that's actually experienced other universes. Like, he's literally like seen other Doctor Stranges. He's like inhabited other Doctor Stranges, all of that. And I'm like, he has like witchcraft and he knows how to use it. And like, he's in his world and he has like nothing to lose. And yeah, he's like a vicious guy. Versus 616, it's like he's walking into all this fresh. Like, he doesn't know anything about this Doctor Strange. He doesn't know anything about really much of anything. He's kind of going through everything blind, which is another thing that I thought was like very interesting about this movie. And kind of the way that it like how it's situated Doctor Strange in the universe and in the multiverse, because, you know, in most instances, like especially when we saw with Infinity War, Doctor Strange is like the guy, you know? So it's like everyone, if anyone has any questions, they go to him. Yeah. Because he, you know, he's so well read, and he
was the MVP of Infinity War, like no doubt.
Exactly, you know, and so people go to him for stuff. Same thing with what was it? The Thor movie,
Odin?
The one with Hela. Oh, I forget. Okay. But when Odin dies and yeah, Ragnarok, thank you. Thor Ragnarok, right? So it was like, where does Thor go? He goes to see Doctor Strange. It's like whenever something is going on that people don't understand, like they go to Doctor Strange. So it was interesting seeing him in a position where he has no idea. He's literally asking questions from a little girl about the multiverse. You know, a dude who used to be Sorcerer Supreme. It's like, So that was super interesting. And I feel like in that fight, they like tried to make it even in a place where I personally thought that it wouldn't have been even. I would have thought that like he would have been severely outclassed and outmatched. And then the way that they proceeded with the fight is like using musical notes the entire time. And like I don't know if it's because they thought that like, you know, we'd seen our fill of like magic stuff and Doctor Strange doing this for 20 hours, but like, you know, it just was interesting that they went that way. I thought that it was a very, very cool mechanic that they introduced, but I think like you know, to your point, Tim, it just creates more problems. Like we start thinking about, okay, so if you're doing this, why aren't you doing that? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So,
or if you can do this, why can't you do that?
right. It brings up a lot of issues, I think, in that kind of way. But you know, I am glad that they duked it out. Obviously, you know, 616 was going to win. It's his movie. So the other one was doomed to die. Just, you know, because of the nature of the movie. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like I said, I'm glad that we went to that world. I'm glad that we saw that Doctor Strange. I do think that things went differently there. Like I wish that they chose some more stuff to happen, like in that fight.
I thought Red Means Go was cool. I was like, okay, that is wonky. I think who referenced it? I think somebody, there's like this, I don't know if it's a movie or a show. I haven't seen it in a bit. I forgot if it was a movie or a show, but it's called Sliders or something. And I think they started that. So they took, I thought that was a cool reference, but no, yeah, I think overall for me, because I guess closing this and moving on to post credits, is that I enjoyed the multiverse aspect. I do wish we got more than just a quick montage for like a minute or two, and then sticking with one for a majority of the film, and then another one for like 5 to 10 minutes. I felt like they could have expanded on the madness of the multiverse. I felt like with a movie like this, there was just a lot to be done, and there was a lot that they needed to do or accomplish. But with what they accomplished, I feel like for fans, they were expecting a bit more. And I'm one of those people too. I'm expecting Tom Cruise Superior Iron Man to show up out of nowhere and being like, I'm part of the Illuminati. I'm expecting like, in a sense, some Infinity War kind of scale.
I was wondering
judgment.
if they were going to go nuts and throw Deadpool in.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I thought that too. Like ever since, obviously we got like the amazing Patrick Stewart. We got Fantastic Four to come in because of the merger with 20th Century Fox, which Kevin Feige said. He said, don't worry, in 5 years, you'll see something. And he was right. That was 5 years ago when he was like, I need time to plan this out. But I will say this, when it comes to the X-Men, I thought that they were going to introduce them.
All of them.
Yeah. I think that was a little bit disappointing, even though I loved how it's weird. I loved how they died. I just love the brutality of Wanda and how she just owned that scene. And it's the multiverse. We're going to see, I believe we're going to see Professor X, even that version, come again later on. I really believe that.
Well, I hope they do it soon, because you know, God bless him, but he's getting kind of up there. I'm not gonna lie.
He's getting kind of old, but I don't think it's going to be like necessarily, I don't want to say like he's going to be like the Professor X of the new X-Men movies. I think they will include them for, and this will now go into post credits. This movie is going in the direction of Secret Wars. I don't know entirely everything about it. But I know that's definitely the direction, because incursions heavily impact that idea. Because what happens in the comic books, I guess, is there's all these different situations that are happening with the incursions, and all these different realities come together and fight. So we're getting this heavy, like we're getting these little teases. And then obviously we got that tease with, we got freaking Furiosa from Mad Max, Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
Which I'm just grateful that we got her in the MCU. That was awesome. Never expected her to show up. She's a great actress. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Didn't really like Fate of the Furious. Didn't like her character in that. But other than that, she's been doing really, really good in her projects, especially Mad Max, one of my favorite action movies ever made. But I will admit, when I saw the post-credit scene, I was like, cool.
I felt like the post-credit scene kind of
Like-
shot the ending in the foot a little bit. Or the mid-credit scene, that is. Because, I mean, the movie ends... when the movie ends and then says directed by Sam Raimi, I was like, yeah. Because it ends with him, he like, everything seems normal. He's just walking out of his house, starts walking down the street, and you think he's going to go to like a coffee meeting or something. I don't know. He looks like he's on his way somewhere for a coffee and a meeting. And all of a sudden he just starts screaming in pain, yells at the sky, and a third eye in his forehead opens, and then it immediately cuts to directed by Sam Raimi. And I was like, that's a Sam Raimi way to end a...
That reminded me of Drag Me to Hell, when it was like, do you know how that movie ended? With Drag Me to Hell?
I saw the end once, I just don't remember.
It's like, literally, I won't say what it is, but it's like happy-go-lucky, and then this person immediately has like the most dreadful type of ending, and then it ends, and it says directed by Sam Raimi, and I'm like, yes,
I'm assuming they get dragged to hell, and then it ends.
They do. They're like, we did it. We defeated the curse. We defeated the curse, and then drag me to hell.
Yeah. See, and wait, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was basically done.
Well, I feel like it's because it leaves the audience being like, what is this? Is this like a Zen thing? Like he's mastered the arts and his third eye is opened? Or is this like, oh, that other universe is strange is still kicking and kind of kicking into the body of this one? Is it like it's really ambiguous what that is. And then the post-credit scene shows him meeting Charlize Theron being like, hey, you caused an incursion. You're going to come help me fix it. Or there was an incursion or whatever. There's been an incursion. You're going to come help me fix it. Unless you're too scared. And then he looks at her and his third eye opens and he's like, not at all. And it's like it immediately went to having the movie end in this moment of panic and ambiguity to he's just like immediately acclimated to it. Everything's fine. It's all good. And I was like, it felt like it kind of shot itself in the foot there for a sec, because to me, it's just like the movie ended on like even Strange doesn't know what's happening. And then the mid-credit sequence happens and it's like, oh, now he's immediately used to the fact that he just has a third eye. He knows what it means. He knows what it does. He's ready to fight and use it. And I'm like, but it just felt like the mid-credit scene just totally skipped a fat chunk of story.
Yeah.
And I hope they establish that, because they could redeem that by establishing like, man, like it's been like weeks or months or a year for him learning, like, what is this? What does it mean? And to me, like, you're right. It feels like there's a chunk of the story that we're missing in that moment, because he's obviously confident. He's like, yeah, check out my big third eye. I'm like, okay.
He's ready to go.
Yeah.
Like, you're just ready to go like that? I don't know.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah. What was interesting to me was like, I don't know, like the ending, it's like the ending as well as the mid-credit scene kind of took away. It was also a part of why I say like by the end he doesn't seem to learn anything, right? He's still the same amount of good like as he was. Is because like I was thinking like when he was walking down the street in like normal clothes and stuff, like you said, he seemed like he was just gonna go do something casual. I was like, dang, okay, so he really did change. Like he's taking a break away from like that whole sorcerer thing, being in Carmitage like all day long, or up in the tower all day long, always reading and researching, working on spells and all that. And he's like just taking some time to be regular, taking time to go out and like do whatever. And then it's like, nope, psych. Like he's good. Oh, crazy third eye. And then it's like, okay, whatever. And then again, he's like walking down the street. And then it's like, oh, you caused an incursion. You're going to help me fix it. And he's like, okay. And it's like, what? Like, what was that? Like what?
Surprise, I'm fine.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about like how I felt. Like, what even was this movie? Like, what was the point? Like at the end of it, like the only thing that really carries over is that he has a third eye. That's it. Wong is still Sorcerer Supreme. Everything like the regular universe, right? 616
Well,
is normal.
I'm
like,
assuming this is the movie where he caused the incursion.
right, because
Yeah.
that
Was this just a
like
2-hour way
technically,
for him to cause the incursion to kick off Secret Wars?
well, that's what I believe. I believe, and really, all this started with, and people want to say Peter Parker and Strange in their interaction, but really it was Loki. Loki is the reason, like, because of their decision of not, or the decision of not, of them taking his place and Sylvie then killing him. That's what started this whole branch and chaos. That's what allowed all of this craziness to happen. Peter Parker to bring other Peter Parkers and Electro, and then now America Chavez running for her life and Scarlet Witch doing all this. Like, it's because of that moment. That's what at least that's what the president of Marvel said. He was like, yeah, like the direct impact of that event is the reason why all of this is happening. So, and now we're getting the Disney Plus series Secret Wars. That's going to have Samuel Jackson back with the Skrulls. Emilia Clarke is in it. I think she plays a Skrull as well. I think this even goes back to Captain Marvel, where it's all been setting up for the next kind of, Endgame, the next Infinity War. And that's Secret Wars. I think that was the point of the film, but it is still a movie where it can get lost in the sauce, because if you don't really know that, it's more like kind of like how you're feeling, where it's okay. Still like, it's entertaining, but did he learn anything? He's a reckless guy. And when you get an ending like that, when you go from how he was in the beginning to the end, and then the post credits, you're like, so he's kind of like how he was in Spider-Man No Way Home, where he's like, got my cup of coffee. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's go down to the cave, little boy. Let's go do some spells. But that could have been a lot worse.
Today is going to be a great
day.
day.
I don't know where my wife and kids are, but I love that freaking video. But it's just, I can understand that. And I kind of agree to a point where in the post-credit scene, it's like, so what does that mean? And I'm okay with the idea of teases, right? But when it comes to his character, and this is a Doctor Strange film, it just felt like, did he really learn anything? So that is a good viewpoint that you brought out. And I honestly, now that you said it out, I kind of do agree with you. But until we see him next, maybe they will further establish it, because I'm assuming this is going to be a trilogy. They might pull a Thor, like, and have 4 movies or 5 or 6, who knows? But I have a feeling it's just going to be a trilogy, and I hope they cover up these loose ends of, like, please, like, have him a full arc of learning this lesson, kind of like how Spider-Man learned his lesson of becoming Spider-Man. Let Doctor Strange become the Sorcerer Supreme again and realize that his power, his decisions have massive consequences.
Well,
so I think that's what it was about.
There are, I don't think this movie is like a, I see what you're saying about him having not really changed, but I do think he kind of reset, because I love the cat at the bottom of your frame. What's their name?
I love the cat.
Junie.
Yeah.
I was wondering what blur was moving in the background, but it is your cat.
Yeah. For whatever reason, right now she's designed to be affectionate. So
take what you can get, man.
Right.
But this movie kind of served as a reset button, because in No Way Home, he kind of lost with Tony gone. Doctor Strange is like ultimately the one people go to all the time when they have questions, when they don't know what to do. And kind of, I think that had the relationship progressed further, that Doctor Strange would have become Peter Parker's new mentor. And Doctor Strange doesn't even know who Peter is anymore, which the movie makes sure to hammer home in one scene, that he knows Spider-Man, he's worked with Spider-Man, but he doesn't know his identity. He doesn't know Peter. And essentially this movie is him getting back a ward, getting back someone that he can train and mentor and be a part of their life. But he doesn't even know that he lost a student in the first place. So the movie is kind of like it's a reset that only the audience knows he had. Nobody else knows he had it. So I can kind of see, I don't know if development is the right word. The right word, I guess, is more of like a reset. But he is, like I said, I see what you're saying about him not changing, but he's posed with a good question. He's posed with the question of, are you happy? He's one of the most powerful beings in his universe. He is, I mean, he's a doctor. He's almost kind of got the world on a platter, but it's not enough. And it's not out of greed that it's not enough. It's out of self-deprecation and letting go of the woman he loved, that nothing feels like it's enough anymore. And I like kind of what they did with it. Like when he says, I love you in every universe to her, I was like, that's all right. That's sweet. And I did kind of like the mature approach of being like, you don't have a Strange here. I don't have you in my world. Why can't we be together? Like we are kind of more or less on the same page, but deep down, both of them know like we have to be part of our own worlds. I liked the confrontation of that. And it feels like nothing happened with Strange developmentally, because ultimately he does just go back to his own world I don't know why I'm blanking on her name. What is her name?
Christine Palmer. Yeah.
Christine Palmer. Thank you. She's not there. Everything that challenged him, everything that was outside of like Wanda, who seems to just be gone, but all the things that challenge him on a personal and emotional level were in another world, and he's not there anymore. I think he developed a bit, but it was kind of more or less a little bit of a reset. It was him kind of confronting the notion and finally having the chance to tell Claire he's still. Is it Christine? Why is Claire stuck in my head? Who's Claire?
Christine. Claire.
He finally had the chance to like admit his feelings to her, but not really her, but still her. I don't know. I think there was a bit of development there, but like I said, all the things that developed him were not in his world. So when he goes back to his world, it kind of feels like nothing happened. He doesn't have a way to talk to her anymore. He doesn't have those things he has to overcome anymore. Wanda is dead. And the other Stranges aren't a part of his world outside of zombies, which didn't that also get crushed too? Am I mistaken? I don't remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
now he should be dead. Definitely.
I think there was some there. I think there could have been more. The kid is his new ward instead of Peter, and he's, confronting some of his romantic feelings while owning up to the fact that he's not happy. And you're right, Rich. It's the multiverse of sadness.
And with that, let's talk about our final thoughts and then our score.
Sure.
I'll keep mine brief. I actually wrote it down too, so I don't go crazy and start talking again for 5 or 10 minutes.
Or 2 hours, 45 minutes and 55 seconds.
Dude, yeah, I already had a feeling. It's like, this is going to be a long one. This is going to be a nice, I know, love my life. Okay. Final thoughts of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Overall, I enjoyed the film. I think it's a fun ride from beginning to end for me personally. And I don't think it's like one of the best MCU movies. And I didn't really expect it to be, but for what it is, it's an entertaining superhero movie with horror elements sprinkled throughout the movie. And it's definitely a Sam Raimi type of MCU film, and I'm glad that they stuck with that rather than just being like it's another MCU movie. It has Sam's stylistic choices, great character work when it comes to Wanda, and still, even with the title in the Multiverse of Madness, I was worried that Doctor Strange was kind of he was going to be the back end of the film, and he wasn't. He was still very much the forefront of this film, and I'm glad they did that. Yeah, there were some things that I wish were brought back to the forefront, like his relationship with Mordo, some more some expansion on the multiverse, like literally going into more other dimensions rather than just a quick montage, which I still love that sequence. Yeah, I could complain about this or that, which there are some valid criticisms, like some of the pacing does kind of feel a little jarring with certain moments where, like you were saying, Richard, how it becomes kind of another movie for a second. I do agree to that to a fault, because then I think about it, like it does further personally Doctor Strange's story. Like when he goes to the other version of Doctor Strange, I felt like the reason for that scene was to yet again show how bad he can be. And that's just personally my take. And even though it did feel kind of like, oh, all this energy, stop. I do see how that could be a little bit jarring. And it's like, okay, the pacing for certain moments does kind of come and go. But overall, I think it is like a nonstop thrill ride. It literally in the first 5 seconds, you're just like, what is happening? Oh my gosh, why is there a mummy monster chasing this Hispanic lady and a weird ponytail Doctor Strange? What the heck? Why are they going for a book of shanty or whatever? I love that. And yeah, I think Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth Olsen, and Sam Raimi and his stylistic choices is what saved the movie for me. And I still give it a good rating. It actually went down though a tiny bit. My first review, which is what you guys, if you guys want to watch another video where I go talking about this movie in a non-spoiler way, I gave it an 8. But after watching it a second time, it's not a huge dip down. But I would give it, and I'm probably going to stick with this score for a while. It could change in a year or so, but I'm going to give Doctor Strange 2 a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was a good film. It's not great. I really thought it was great, but looking at some of the issues that I had or thought I didn't have, but then became an issue for me later on after my second viewing, those things did kind of stick out. But the positives definitely outweighed more of the negatives. So yeah, I liked it. 7.5 out of 10. Tim, what did you think? Final thoughts for Doctor Strange 2?
I know I liked it. Like I said, it's hard for me to turn my brain off in movies a lot, and the movie had a lot of scenes where I was like, I can't find the setting that I need in my brain to like enjoy this like I feel like I'm supposed to. I know I liked it. I really loved Sam Raimi's creative stamp on it. I appreciate the marketing doing a pretty good, I think, a relatively good job of hiding the idea of Wanda being the villain instead of kind of this ally who's helping. Some people kind of like called it the movie. I wasn't sure who the villain was going to be. They're marketing the idea that like it's going to be another Strange from another world who's the villain. I thought maybe it would just be some rando that wasn't in the marketing at all. I wasn't sure. But I do like the idea of Wanda kind of being equated to this monstrous force that can weave her way into anything to get what she wants. Like I said earlier, and I won't dive too far into it again, I don't really like that now there's essentially like this massive skeleton key on the table that can unlock any door and essentially win any fight by just punching her way into a world where there's an easier solution. I just think that's a massive plot hole / plot convenience that's totally on the table now. I really wanted to visit more worlds. I wanted to see more I don't know if I want to say see more characters, but I guess I just wanted to see more possibilities. Um, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh man, I wish they had Hugh Jackman. Oh man, I wish they had Ryan Reynolds. I just wish I wish we saw more. We really didn't spend time in too many different worlds. Like, um, it's like we just kind of hopped over to 2 or 3 different places in 2 hours and called it a movie. I expected the movie to honestly be a lot more chaotic. I didn't really feel like the movie was particularly chaotic. It was zany in its own way. It was zany in a Sam Raimi way, but it wasn't like, I didn't really think it was necessarily completely as off the wall as I thought it was going to be, or as its title almost suggests it's going to be. But that being said, I still had a lot of fun. I think Wanda was a great villain and a very understandable villain, even in the face of contradiction. You get it. I liked a decent amount of the visual effects. There were some good practical effects. The people who know Sam Raimi were aware of the Bruce Campbell cameo, which was a lot of fun. His little post-credit scene was very, very funny, and a really good callback to the fact that he has to fight his own hand in other movies too. He just seems like he's a good sport about being super campy at everything he's in. So I appreciate that a lot. Overall, though, I don't think it's high tier Marvel. I think it's solid, and I kind of fall at kind of like the 7.0, maybe 6.9 range. And I see it being somewhere between like 6.8 and 7.0. So somewhere around there, like low good, kind of high okay. Because Doctor Strange, I think the first Doctor Strange kind of put out on the table like incredible visual effects, and just it opened a really cool world of possibilities, introducing magic into the MCU. And then this movie tries to open more possibilities by being like, we can dimension hop now. And I felt like in the first Doctor Strange, granted, I think the pacing of the first Doctor Strange is honestly a little wild, because I had to watch it a second time to make sure most of that movie seems to take place in real time. Like a huge chunk of that movie takes place in real time. And I just had a hard time swallowing that Strange became that crafty, that powerful, that manipulative in real time. But both movies are basically setting out to open up this world of possibilities. The first Doctor Strange, it was like, there are rules. This is a sling ring. This is what it does. This is this. This is that. This movie was just like, no, there's no structure. Music notes explode now. I just, I don't know. I guess I just wanted a bit more. It's like I don't know how to put it without sounding really contradictory. I wanted more madness in the sense of like kind of zaniness and crazy worlds to visit, because the possibilities are stated to literally be infinite. But I wanted more structure in the sense of like, this is how we get there. This is how this works. I wanted that kind of structure to it. And Rich, what you were saying kind of about the like feeling like he's still the same guy at the end of the movie, for the most part, I agree that even in the face of these questions, he still feels like the same dude. Am I happy? No, I'm not, but I'm going to strut down the sidewalk like I did at the beginning. Like, he still feels largely the same. So yeah, I was hoping for more, but I don't think it was a bad movie. I think it was fine. I don't think I would necessarily like watch it again out of like, man, you know what movie I could really go for right now. Like, it's not at the top of my watch again list, but I'm sure I'll see it again sometime.
Richard, what'd you think?
So what I wrote was, I said, valiant effort. some things and envelopes were pushed that worked, while there were some critical things that were missed. Um, I think that for me, there are a couple key issues for me. One thing was pacing. I felt like there was a lot of stop and start. The movie started off like very bombastically, like there was a lot of energy, and then boom, stops. And then another one takes off, super frenetic, then boom, stops, and it was like that. There was no real transition. And I felt like the arc, like it didn't really escalate. Like I felt like it really kind of, to me, let me see if what I'm saying is accurate. I like uh I'm trying to wade through my own thoughts and feelings. I think that search your feelings, Luke. I feel um like the peak, one of the peaks for me was when, well, actually, no, never mind. I'm gonna take that back. What I was about to say was very inaccurate. No, because it does escalate. I shouldn't necessarily say that. I think though it just
But
didn't
it's the
feel like,
pacing. It's like it's kind of
yeah,
like I get what you mean. Where it's like
yeah. The
you kind of
sequencing
expect it to
was,
be
yeah, yeah.
where it's like nonstop, but then there's these moments of like, oh, we got to expand on exposition here, exposition. Oh, let's run now for the next 10 minutes. Stop for the
It's
next
got a
10
pretty
minutes.
zany start to it.
Yeah. The sequencing was just very odd to me. So there was that. Then there was the whole like power scaling thing, which again is like more of a writing issue. Just certain things just don't make any sense. Um, and 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 in that, which I didn't really talk about, I'm not going to go super in depth into it now. But just like Wong, I was like, okay, like in the very beginning when I saw like he came out and he was fighting, I was like, oh snap! So we're gonna finally be able to see Wong like for real, do some stuff. And it was like not really, when Scarlet Witch came and was attacking Carmitage, like he was literally just reduced down to yelling orders at everybody, running around frantically and yelling orders to everybody. Hey, everyone, guard right there. And then like when someone, when Dr. Strange was like, oh, she's gonna get in their mind. He's like, then he ran around, everybody steal your mind. And it was just like, it was weird. And he got knocked off the cliff and then he was like hanging on by the thing. And it was just like, dang, okay, this is Sorcerer Supreme. Wow. All right. So there was that. And then I forget what the third thing was, but those are some big things for me. I did enjoy the movie though. Like it was great. I did leave the movie like, okay, like that was a very different MCU experience. And I appreciate the places that they went and some places that they were trying to go. And it was fun. Certain things felt a little bit redundant to me, like as far as when they were, traversing through, the multiverse. It just went right back to the same sequence in the first Doctor Strange. When she tapped his head and then next he's going through all these realities, is the exact same thing. Except this sequence was like longer. Like it felt super long. I don't know why, but it just felt like it just kept going and going. And I think that was like a certain feeling that I had with like certain sequences in the film where it just felt like it kind of overstayed its welcome. But I think in general it was a fun film. I probably will end up watching it again at some point. But it's by no means like my favorite MCU film. I really love Doctor Strange. I don't know how, like, what the consensus is in general, like how people feel about the first Doctor Strange, but I really, really enjoy that film. And there are times when like I go back to it and just watch it casually. But I don't necessarily think that this holds that same kind of weight in like my mind. It's like kind of on the lower end. So like for me, I also give it a 7.5 because I think that like it was an okay film. Like there are a lot of great elements and components to it. I could see why a lot of people felt, a certain kind of way about it. Yeah, it's like between a 7 and a 7.5. Because I don't think it was a bad film. I definitely don't think it was like that great of a film either, which I hate to say because I know, a lot of people worked on it and it was, in development for a long time. It's like in the last thing you guys did together, like what you were saying, Tim, about like feeling bad about like just disparaging, films all the way just because it's like, a lot of people work super hard on it. So you don't, but yeah, I think it was all right. And I think that it kind of opens the door for the MCU to go a different route, to go at times a more morbid route, to at times dial a little bit more into the horror, to even sometimes dip into campiness a bit more, because this film had all of that. Like it just, it sampled all that. And I think in the moments where it did those things, it did it very well. Just when it was all crammed together, it just felt odd to me personally because it felt like it kept switching tones. Like it couldn't really decide what kind of film it wanted to be. But
Okay.
yeah, so
I think it would be impossible to kind of answer, well, what would it take to make this movie a 10? I don't think that's a fair question. And I think maybe each of us have partially answered it, but like what would make this movie better?
Expansion of the multiverse, and going a little bit more mad, like staying more accurate to the title of it. And I think like for me, I was personally fine with the multiverse part. It was the madness part, like the chaotic part, where yeah, it's still a frenetic paced film where it's like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Like literally how it opens up. It's probably one of my favorite openings where it's just like, it just throws you in. I love when movies do that. It's like, I'm in, I'm engaged. Let's go. I'm on this mission. Let's save this girl. Because she's very vital, blah, blah, blah. And then we get to the end. She's saved. Yay. Happy ending. But when it comes to the middle chunk and they go into the multiverse aspect, yeah, they go mad for that montage. Like that part is mad. It's bonkers. That's crazy. But that was it. Then they just stay. I feel like it's not just the cameos too. Like cameos don't make a movie better. Seeing Deadpool and Hugh Jackman interact, that would be great, but it wouldn't necessarily make the movie better. For me, it's expanding more on that pacing feel, like letting it flesh out, because they let certain things fleshed out, like Wanda and her character development, Doctor Strange and his, the idea of his choices, consequences, but they didn't really flesh out the multiverse. And I feel like if they did that, this movie for me would have been like a 9. It would have been like, this is one of the best MCU films because of what they're doing with the MCU and the universe, the impact that it's going to make. And there are amazing things that they did amazing things in this film. I personally feel like for the potential of like Secret Wars and potentially that post-credit scene, that's actually his wife in the comic books.
Clea.
But yeah, like that potential there. She's the niece to Dormammu, which is kind of cool. But multiverse part, I just personally, for me, I feel like if they just expanded that a bit more on the madness scale and flesh that out and not just have it be two places, I think my enjoyment of it, not necessarily saying like a masterpiece or it's perfect, but a better experience, that is what could have elevated my experience, is just the multiverse aspect.
Okay, so like a expansion and madness.
Yes.
Okay.
And staying true to that title. Because I mean, like, I don't want to say it's not entirely true. There's aspects of madness and obviously multiverse, but it's not like when you hear that title, you're like, whoa, this is going to be insane. And it was insane in certain parts. I don't want to say it's not, but overall, not really.
Okay, I feel it. What could have made it better for you, Rich?
I think first off, it's rules. I think you hit it on the head as far as like what are the parameters of like what's going on. It laid those things out very well in the first Doctor Strange of like, okay, this is how this magic works. This is how we do this. This is how it set the rules and it set the tone, and it set the tone for Doctor Strange and why he conducts himself the way that he conducts himself, why he says no to doing certain things, why he says yes to doing other things. So I think in this movie, it didn't really do a lot of that. I think it was interesting because it put him in a position where he's not in power. He's not in control. He's thrust into literally worlds that he doesn't understand. And everything is beyond him. So I understand that, like, that is also part of why it didn't lay out rules, because he doesn't know any of them. However, I think that there was a way to incorporate that in a way that it just made all that make sense. So I think that that's the first thing. And then the second thing for me was the sequencing and the pacing. I feel like there are times when there are certain things that went too long, and there are other things that were too short. I do like the fact that they went the emotional route with Doctor Strange, because I think that with him, it is very easy to then go into the whole mystical thing where everything is they're just throwing around magic all the time. I do like the fact that they dealt with him as a human being. And I think that there are ways that they could have even tapped into that a little bit more. I think that there was just a little bit too much going on in the film that they had to tend to in order to, go more with some of those things. Again, like I mentioned before, the stop, start. I feel like they could have done a little bit better with transitions into, in between the different parts there. So, that's another thing. And then, another thing was, like I was saying, as far as like with I guess at this point, I'd just say the writing I just remember what my last thing was, my real last thing. But like, as far as like with the characters, certain just like easy, quick rides where it's like, this could have been an opportunity for something really cool, but like, obviously they didn't flesh any of it out. So it's like, as quickly as we found out about that shrine and the throne and all this dark stuff, and it was like a prophecy and yada, yada, it's like all gone, just crushed. Okay, bye. We'll never hear about it again.
Right.
Stuff like that, things with Wong. It's like they put him in, like, and then we wouldn't see him anymore. Stuff with like the Illuminati with Mordo. It's like, okay, where is he? Is he still just down in the pit? Like he can't climb out? I don't know. Stuff like that were like kind of bothersome. So there's that. And then the very last thing for me that I think they could have done a better job with is, I feel like there are like two ways that they could have made this better. Either, and that's with tone. I think that there's two ways that they could have like made the tone work, and either A, stick to one way that you like want to approach this, and like focus on making that really good. It doesn't mean you can't have little elements of this or that, but you just stick to that. Or B, you really do try your best to like meld all of them together, where it's like, where they just make sense. I feel like there were a lot of different tonal shifts in this film that made it hard to like stay. For me, it was hard to stay in that world. Like where like that suspension of disbelief just went out the window, because it's like, okay, so at 1 minute we have the super vibrant, squid alien, or whatever it is, trying to get a kid. And then like, next thing we know, his eyes getting ripped from its socket and thrown on the ground. And it's like, okay, what is happening here? At one moment we see this, group of people called the Illuminati, of all things, called the Illuminati, and it's all these, some of these characters that we know about or whatever. And then next thing we know, one guy's getting ripped to shreds. Another dude blew his brains out by trying to talk with, and his mouth is closed. One gets cut in half, right? It's like that kind of stuff. It's like, it's this constant yo-yo. And then at other moments, it's like a horror film, and so it's just like, what is going on? And then at another point, it's like, they're cracking jokes and whatever else. It was it was odd. So for me personally, so that would have really helped elevate it for me, is if they would have just chosen what it was that they were trying to do and stuck to that. And then just had sprinkles of those elements or found ways to weave them in instead of it being like, okay, this sequence, we're going to do horror. This sequence, we're going to make it where it's more campy. This sequence, we're going to do it where it's more gruesome, that kind of thing, you know?
I see what you mean. So just to make sure I understand, did you feel like it couldn't decide what genre it was, so it just tried to be all of them from one scene to the next?
Yes, that's like literally like what I had said coming out of the movie, was like it felt like a film that couldn't decide what kind of film it wanted to be.
Okay. For me, I wanted more closure on Wanda's villainhood. Her flip just kind of felt fast. Like I said, a conversation between the two Wandas would have been good, and just overall more closure on her journey as a villain, instead of just being like redemptive now. And kind of like you said, Jack, I think I wanted this movie to be crazier. It is crazy in a sense, you know, he becomes zombie Strange and uses the souls of the damned as a really effing awesome cloak / weapon / there were the moments where I sometimes just had to turn my brain off, like when he's like, the souls of the damned are coming after me, and she's like, use them, and I'm in my chair just like, can you? How are you allowed to? Does his brand of magic control the souls of the damned? I would think that his brand of magic would not be as effective as chaos magic or witchcraft would be on the souls of the damned, but suddenly Strange's magic can do that. I don't know how, I don't know why, but if I turn my brain off, pretty cool. And I mean, I guess it makes sense that he was able to, because he was using darker magic in order to be able to beam himself in, because it's normally like a forbidden jutsu or whatever.
Yeah.
Jack's like, what? Rich is like, I get it.
No, I agree with you. And I mean, to what you're saying, it's like the Ancient One, right? The whole reason why Mordo was like, screw this, was because she dived into something that she promised that she never done that. And it's something entirely different from what their religion or whatever that they're so accustomed to.
I think that's I'm really glad you brought up the Ancient One, because maybe could have been the bridge to what I wanted, because I do want Strange to develop more, but because Strange is now the kind of the mentor figure in 616, who is there to look out for him? Well, now he has this kid who can punch into other worlds. He could find her, and because of who she is, she could like know what's happening. She's extremely powerful, and this is a movie where he could have used a mentor figure, because now he's confronted with the notion of him not being happy and faking it for so long. And she is honestly kind of the perfect character for him to be able to get that across with and try to work through that. So I think if they were going to have dimension hopping and this and that, I would have thought that would have been a character he sought out to be like, I thought I was okay, but I'm actually broken and I don't know what to do and I need your help. And if they're going to dimension hop from place to place where there's like different versions of Strange, there should be different versions of her. And I think she would have, I don't think necessarily, I can understand if she's the kind of character who might abstain from battle because she just knows things. And the way Tilda Swinton plays the Ancient One, you just understand that she knows if she's a necessary asset in a fight or not. She just does she does such a good job playing that character that I'm kind of like, no, you don't have to fight. I think they'll be fine if you think they'll be fine. The way she plays that does kind of allow me to suspend my disbelief in the right way. But it seemed weird to me because that was his mentor in most of this, in Doctor Strange, and I love the part that she played in Endgame, just like, oh, the Hulk, that's cool. Like, I don't give an F. And I didn't, like America has the potential to be a magic key, I didn't want her to be that. I wanted her to be like, when you mentioned her, it just clicked to me like, oh, that could have been the bridge for Strange to really confront his feelings, to come across someone who can just look at him and know his intent and know his thoughts and know like that he's not even from the same world as her, but they still know who each other are.
Yeah, the movie could have benefited. That's another thing that could have elevated the film. They had great chemistry, but if they developed more scenes together, I think their relationship would have hit harder.
I would have liked.
They really only had 2 scenes, like really dialoguing with each other.
I would have liked a better written relationship between America and Strange. Personally, I didn't think it was like terrible, but it felt easy. It felt like they took the really easy path to writing that relationship out. Like it's almost the same as he treats Peter, like, hey kid, okay kid, earn your way kid. I trust you now, kid. You got this, kid. You got this. Yeah. It was very structurally similar, I think, to his relationship with Peter Parker. But I guess I would have liked for it to have been because they've already kind of written how Strange is. I would have liked for her character to be written in a way that challenges him a bit more. And I would have liked for them to use the dimension hopping to an extent. With Christine, they used it as a way for him to confront his feelings, but not necessarily as a way for him to resolve them or develop them meaningfully. He does ultimately admit, I love you in every universe, I always have. I don't know how to get past this. He could have gone to someone to not necessarily get past it, but start to confront it. And the Ancient One would have been actually, I was like, I don't know who, I don't know how. And when you mentioned her, I was like, that's it. That's who could have been in another universe for him to go to and be like, help me. Like, I know I'm powerful, but I'm broken. And I don't feel like I can be at my best to do what the multiverse needs me to do if I'm like this. So I think I would have liked, and I guess that's the long way of saying I would have liked Strange to have developed more. What that is like the best avenue I can think of as of to how. And yeah, so more development, that could be a possibility. How better closure on Wanda's villainhood. And honestly, I think I just would have written America differently to I think just kind of be a bit more of a challenging character. I'm not 100% sure as of to how I would make her a more challenging character as of yet. I just think their relationship was, I feel like writing out the dynamic between them was just probably not very difficult.
Well, to like conclude the thought of like that too with America Chavez, I think they did like, I remember I saw what they were doing, the whole memory scene. She's like, it's my turn, I want to see. And then she sees her mom's. And I honestly, like, I was like, I'm not going to get emotional. And then they go, and I was just imagining being a little kid and having that happen. I was like, wow, that actually is kind of terrifying and absolutely emotional.
Yeah,
I think I got it more. Yeah, I think I got it more the second time when I saw that, because like I was laughing. I'm like, you killed your parents because of a bee, you stupid little girl. I'm like, I'm so mean. But
I did find it a little silly that I did find it a little silly that she punches holes in the shape of stars. Not for any particular reason. They just are. She just punches star portals to other dimensions.
America,
yeah.
Because her name is America. I didn't understand why that was. It just, I
guess that's in the comic books. Like I'm not entirely sure, but I'm assuming that's what
I assumed accurate. When I saw that, because I was like, there's literally, this has to be like service to the comic books, because this does not make any sense.
No idea.
Because she does do this pose a lot in the comic books. So she did that. I was like, that's cool. I remember seeing that somewhere in the comic books, or at least an image of a front cover. And I was like, okay, they got the jacket. They got, her name's America. She's punching stars. I guess that's her thing. I don't think it was like, I think that was kind of like almost the campy side of the superhero-ness of the movie, where it's like we literally have a character that punches stars into other universes. Like it's a teleportation, waypoint.
I did like Doctor Strange coming to respect Wong more. He bows at him at the end, like acknowledges, like,
That was good.
You know, the title of Sorcerer Supreme is in good hands, and I respect it now. I appreciated that.
Well, guys, honestly, I might just have
an
this
hour 15 minutes. Guess what it is? It's 3 hours 22 minutes and 7 seconds.
I'm gonna try with everything in my power tonight to maybe edit some stuff out.
God
but
help.
I feel like
I was gonna say God bless, bro.
I love you dudes, and I want to do this again. But now talking to you guys, the audience, thank you so much. I don't know why you're watching a 3.5 hour video. You must be in a car. You must be like on your way to Vegas, or
they're putting it in their
headphones
headphones while they go to work. That's what they're doing. We all know.
Either working out. Like, guys, this is a way more important conversation than what's going on with the Heard and Johnny Depp case. Like, let's be real here. Just kidding. That's another video subject that could really be longer.
That is another video. Yeah.
That is another video, which honestly I was thinking of doing something like that. But anyways, guys, that is the end for our Doctor Strange review. Thank you so much. Please like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. We are going to have more videos like this coming up for some of the bigger movies and maybe some of the independent films. Who knows? But be on the lookout for those and be blessed.
Take care.
That's it. Oh my gosh.